quotes, infused with the scent of potpourri. The films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show each episode. You can find more of our work at obsessiveviewer.com and more of our podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. And while every episode will always be free, if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for tons of bonus audio content, including TV and book reviews, immediate reaction movie reviews, Patreon potpourri episodes, movie commentary tracks, and much more. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media and Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. And today is actually a very special episode of The Obsessive Viewer. So this week, Stranger Things 4 Volume 2 is going to be coming out on Friday, July 1st. And what I decided to do is release an episode of the podcast where I talk about each episode of Volume 1 of Stranger Things 4 individually. And this is basically me opening the gates to our Patreon. So what I'm doing this so that you guys can hear my thoughts on this season of Stranger Things ahead of Volume 2, which comes out on Friday, but also to give you guys a taste of what the Patreon is. So all of these episodes, or this entire episode, is a compilation of the Stranger Things TV episode reviews that were previously exclusive to Patreon. And the way that works is that each episode, I watched one episode, I recorded for about 25-30 minutes about each episode, and then threw it on Patreon. And so now you are getting the compilation of all 7 recordings in one episode of Obsessive Viewer. And yeah, what I'm hoping is that if you listen to this and like it, you decide to check out Patreon, because there is a ton of other content on Patreon, not just the Stranger Things recordings, but I also did episode reviews of Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Foundation, Chapelwaite, and I'm planning on doing Severance and Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, and I almost said Moon Pie, and just a bunch of stuff. So I'm really excited. I'm really proud of what I have on Patreon and everything. And so I hope that you guys check it out if you haven't already. But as a kind of special gift to our listeners, I'm releasing a previously Patreon exclusive recordings of my thoughts on Stranger Things season 4. And yeah, like I said, each one was recorded immediately after watching the episode. So basically I give my spoiler-filled thoughts on each individual episode. So if you want to check the show notes for timestamps of where to bounce around to your favorite episode or least favorite episode and hear my thoughts on it, I have it all in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/OV374. Yeah, that's it for this intro, I guess. Special thank you to Mike and Dustin over at As Good As It Gets for providing the theme song, which I still love so much for our new theme song. So check that out. As Good As It Gets. The song is A Little Mad Sometimes, theme from the Obsessive Viewer podcast. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to my Stranger Things reviews on Patreon. Once again, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. In addition to these recordings, I also have hours and hours and hours of audio of me talking about Stephen King short fiction is a big one. So I've been doing The Church of King, where I'm going through Stephen King short fiction collections. Night Shift, Skeleton Crew have both been done, and now I'm working on Nightmares and Dreamscapes. That's mostly every Sunday, if I can get the timing right and everything. I post it. And so yeah, so check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy this special Patreon preview episode with my thoughts on Stranger Things 4 Volume 1. Hi, Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting us and for listening to us and for, supporting us and everything. I am Matt, of course, and I'm here to share my thoughts on Chapter 1 of Stranger Things 4, which is titled The Hellfire Club. And I didn't sing along to the opening theme because it's not a very good sing-along kind of opening theme music or anything, but yeah, maybe as I progress through these reviews, maybe I'll acclimate to that, or maybe I'll figure something out by the end. But as you guys know, Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1 was released on May 27th on Netflix. It's 7 episodes, and then on July 1st, I believe, the final 2 episodes of the season will be released in Volume 2. And what's crazy is that those 2 episodes are going to be, like, the first one is going to be, I think, like an hour and a half, and then the final episode of Season 4 will be, like, a whopping 2.5 hours long, which is nuts to me, so we'll see how that goes and everything. But it's a unique release structure, and then next year, Season 5 will come out, and that will be the final season of Stranger Things. And what I'm doing on Patreon and on the greater, Obsessive Viewer podcast front, I'm going to do something a little bit, not different, but a little bit unique. So what I'm going to do is the weekend or the week before, or the week of the release of Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 2, so the week before July 1st, or the week of July 1st, I am going to release these recordings of Volume 1 onto the main Obsessive Viewer feed, and that's going to be kind of its own Obsessive Viewer episode. And then if you want to hear my thoughts on episodes 7 or episodes 8 and 9 that will premiere, in July 1st, join Patreon at the $2 level and become a patron. So basically that's kind of what I'm doing. If you're listening to this, before it's on the main feed, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. And if you're listening to this on the main feed, please consider supporting us on Patreon. So there's tons of content and everything. You have heard my spiel in every episode, so I hope you guys consider it. It's it gives money to us and gives us validation, and also there's just a ton of stuff there, including several recordings of me yawning into the microphone. But anyway, so that's my spiel there. So so let's go ahead and talk about Stranger Things 4. The first episode of the season is called Chapter 1, The Hellfire Club. And what I'm going to do, obviously, is I'm going to spoil this episode and previous episodes, but I'm not going to spoil anything going forward because I haven't seen anything going forward. So I'm going to be basically sharing my thoughts as I watch the show episode by episode in this review series. So I've watched the first episode, and I'm going to go ahead and read a plot summary courtesy of IMDb. The plot summary is, still reeling from the events last year, the gang tries to move on with their lives. However, a threat is brewing both on Earth and the Upside Down. So this episode was a very good introductory episode to the season. It's now 1986, and the group is, in high school, and they're dealing with some stuff. So Will Byers and his mother and 11 God, I'm so sorry. Jonathan and 11 have all moved to California. And let's see. So yeah, and then there's some changes around Hawkins, not most notably, but there's several things that are notable. What the kind of head cheerleader character archetype person, who I think this is her only appearance, her only episode. So it's an interesting introduction. She is being kind of haunted by monsters from the Upside Down, and we don't know the extent of it. We don't know what the deal is. We don't know exactly what it is, but she is being hunted, or was, because she is murdered horrifically in this episode. So yeah, so we've got that going on. We've got the main group, doing D&D, while Lucas has joined the basketball team and wants to be kind of part of the popular crowd. And there's this whole conflict of if he is going to be at the game or play the final stage of their friend's campaign for D&D. And it's also, he wants them to be at the game so that they can, support him and be in the quote unquote cool group, and everything. It's a really interesting kind of storyline for the show to explore, because it's that old freaks and geeks thing. It's that old, popularity and personal image in high school, that I think is just really, really solid storytelling in general, whenever it pops up and everything. It's something that I really like, because it's something that's, in my experience, it's pretty relatable. It's a relatable kind of storyline or story structure and everything. And I like it. I enjoy it. So I like seeing that. What I don't necessarily like, or the thing that I don't really, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Stranger Things is a very entertaining show. Stranger Things is very, very, very much motivated by nostalgia, the Netflix algorithm, and has this core dependency on other works. And it's to the point where the show has consistently, throughout all of its seasons, has consistently been verging on the being on the verge of being just complete ripoffs. A complete ripoff. Like, the first season is Firestarter. That is what the first season is. That is Stephen King's Firestarter. Season 2 has a little bit of Aliens, even with the stunt casting of Paul Reiser. And then season 3 has some Terminator stuff. And it seems like this season they're like, oh, okay, well, let's do Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's do that. And I kind of hate that I love it. Like, it kind of, when I think about Stranger Things and I think about the acclaim that it gets and the fact that it is so heavily predicated on using the nostalgia of the audience or verging on ripping off other properties so that it can satisfy the nostalgia of the audience, or it can just be something that would look unique to an audience that isn't familiar with the thing that they're ripping off. So I don't know, but it's still just so damn good. So I have that kind of thing. It in my head, when I think about Stranger Things, I honestly think of the gif from Breaking Bad with Aaron Paul saying he can't keep getting away with this, because that's kind of how I feel about Stranger Things. Like, it's not original enough for me, and it's too much built around pop culture. So I've had that struggle. I've had that conflict in my head with Stranger Things, with each season of Stranger Things that's come out. And frankly, I'm kind of glad that it's going to end next year so I can kind of be free of this kind of inner conflict that I have with it. But in any case, it's not, again, it's a very entertaining show. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I just feel like it's not really all that original, and that kind of bothers me a lot throughout the run of the show. So with that kind of out of the way, like I said, they're doing Nightmare on Elm Street in this season, and I'm kind of on board with it. I'm kind of interested in it. It was a connection that I didn't really make until the end of the episode, when Chrissy is in Eddie's trailer and she's, taken out by whatever that monster is, while Eddie is trying to wake her up and everything. Like that is Nightmare on Elm Street. That is a Nightmare on Elm Street. That is exactly what it is. And it gets under my skin. It really does. But anyway, it was a very effective sequence, an effective storyline and surprise in the story. I'm not going to argue that. Like, it's very effective. And what I'm hoping, what I'm really, really hoping is that it isn't just strictly a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff. I'm really hoping that's not the case. I have faith that that's not gonna be the case. But what I'm hoping that they do is I'm really, really, really hoping that they tie that into the Satanic Panic article that Eddie was reading in the cafeteria and laughing about, because that's something from the 80s that I'm very intrigued by or interested in, because it's the same thing that people say today with violence and everything. It, like, people today are saying, video games cause mass shootings, which is not the freaking case. But anyway, yeah, so I'm hoping that the Satanic Panic part of the story kind of comes more into focus, or becomes a prevalent part of the kind of background of whatever is going on in Hawkins. Because I really like that as a vessel for story in this show. So yeah, so I'm really hopeful that that's going to be the case. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to kind of get caught up before or that my mind wouldn't be adjusted to that I would have forgotten. I have this weird tick in my brain where anytime a show is coming back or a show is returning after a lengthy hiatus, after like 10 or 15 minutes after I've seen the previous season, I feel like I have to rewatch the previous season. I need to be caught up. It's something that I've tried to work on and worked on getting through. Like tomorrow I have a ticket to see Top Gun Maverick, and I have not seen the first Top Gun in many years, and I don't really care to watch it again, but I feel like I have to see Maverick, so I don't know. Anyway, so so I was afraid that I was going to be a little bit lost in the shuffle here, but they do a very solid recap on Netflix and everything, and I watched that, and it acclimated me well to it. So I don't know. I'm pretty okay with like the status of everything. The status of everything. It's very easy to kind of dive right back into it. Especially when one of the big character moments involves a character that we don't know, a character that is having this weird, not premonition, but this weird vision that's very Freddy Krueger-esque. So I'm curious how that's going to come into play throughout the rest of the season and how that's going to evolve. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Billy's kind of possession in season 3. And maybe that is a little bit redundant for them to do this kind of thing again, although it's not a possession thing, although it is very visually like a possession, like a demonic possession, which is also why I hope the Satanic Panic kind of plot line kind of really comes into play and becomes a big part of the story this season, because of the way that she's levitating in the trailer and the way that her bones crack and everything. It just felt very much like a Exorcist possession kind of movie, that kind of motif. So I'm very curious about that. But elsewhere, I do want to talk about the prologue or the opening sequence. It was intense. It was interesting. It takes place in 1979. We see Papa, Matthew Modine, returning, and he goes and is working with 10 when a massacre breaks out in Hawkins laboratories. And yeah, it looks like 11 is the culprit of that. And I'm curious how that's going to come together. I'm curious how that's going to tie together. The title for episode 7 of this volume implies that it's going to pay this off in quite a big way. So pay that off in a big way. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. So California, I'm really interested in how the very different, locations are going to come into play in this season, because it kind of sucks. I'm kind of bummed about it, because it's just, it kind of sucks to have some important characters way on the other side of the country, while everyone else is in Indiana, where Hawkins and all of the Upside Down stuff is happening. It just feels like a little bit, gives me a little bit of anxiety because everyone's so far apart and everything. The stuff with Nancy and Jonathan, I don't really care, honestly. She is, I have forgotten her name already. Wow. What is her character's? Did I just say it? I did. Yeah. Nancy and Jonathan. I did say Nancy, right? Anyway, so the stuff with Nancy and Jonathan, I don't really care all that much about. This long distance thing. I don't really get why they are so, why the relationship seems to be fizzling and everything. Probably because of the long distance, but it's drama that I don't really care that much about. And he's staying behind, or he's not gonna go visit her, or she's not gonna visit him for spring break or something. I don't know. It's fine. It's whatever. We'll see how it evolves throughout the season, but I'm not that invested in their relationship or anything. And her buddy, like journalism buddy, is just doesn't really, like, I don't get a good vibe from that, and it just feels like uncomfortable rather than a threat to a central character's relationship or anything like that. It just feels a little off kilter and not very interesting to me. So, and I'm also curious how the spring break angle is going to happen. I don't know, or how it's going to be, because I don't know how much of the show is going to take place, or how much of the season is going to take place with Mike in California with Elle. I don't know how all that's going to work out or whatever. Yeah, so really there wasn't a lot of meat on this episode all that much, except for the ending and the introduction of Eddie. Let's talk about Eddie. What a fun, energetic character. He is the kind of new, like, the leader of the D&D group that they're a part of, the Hellfire Club, and he also deals some drugs on the side, and Chrissy tries to get drugs from him, because she's been having these horrible visions and everything that leads to a nice rendezvous in the park where they meet up, and he's actually very charming and charismatic. And then they go back to his trailer to get the harder drugs, and that's when all hell breaks loose, and she dies, which I'm very curious how that's going to be. How that's going to be. How that's going to be. What's the word I'm looking for? Addressed. There we go. How that's going to be addressed in the next episode and going forward and everything. I'm very curious how that's going to play out. But yeah, I think that he's a very charismatic character, and I'm very interested to see where his character goes throughout the season. There was not enough, Joe Carey, I don't know, but, him and Maya Hawke, there wasn't enough of them. I really loved their pairing in season 3, and they're fantastic in the show. They are absolutely fantastic. There wasn't enough of them there. We learned that Robin is crushing on this girl in band that she plays with, and I appreciate that she's afraid to ask her out. She's afraid to share her feelings and everything, because, as she says, it's different for Steve, because Steve asks out a girl and he gets rejected and nothing happens. His ego gets bruised for a little bit, but for the most part, nothing happens. But if she asks a girl out and asks the wrong girl out, not only is she, not only is her ego going to be bruised, but like if she asks out the wrong girl, she will become the town pariah and all of that stuff. So I really like that they're kind of using that, like, they're not shying away from, the weirdness, not weirdness, but the, lack of progressive attitudes toward homosexual relationships in the 80s. I'll say that much, I guess. So I'm glad that they're doing that in a constructive way, or a way that doesn't feel forced or anything. Yeah. Also, the pep rally, this is a complete non sequitur, but the pep rally was a little, like, kind of fun and silly. The kind of captain of the basketball team giving that weird, just very, like really just, sappy, speech. Like, it's like that came from a completely different show. Like, and I think it kind of helped that I've been watching Friday Night Lights just in my free time, just rewatching it. So like having a character like grab the microphone and which was a Shure SM58, by the way, and saying like, well, we're doing this for all the people that we lost in the fire and at the mall and everything. It just felt like very performative, and I don't know, it was a really interesting kind of piece of, I guess, comedy in the show. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was interesting enough. So another thing, kind of bouncing around again. So Max seeing Eddie and Chrissy go into the trailer, I'm curious how that's going to factor in as well, because Max has been having a rough go of it because, you know, her brother died and everything, and she's been kind of dealing with that and the post-traumatic stress of all of that stuff. And I'm curious and I'm nervous for that character because I enjoy her a lot, and I'm nervous to see what route she takes. I would hope that they don't like do anything too drastic with the character or kill her off or anything like that, because, you know, she's grieving, she's mourning the loss of her brother. So I feel like that would be a little mean for them to do anything too horrific to her. But it seems like this season is really taking special attention, or paying special attention to the horror side of the story rather than, you know, the drama or the science fiction aspects of it. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see. And I also had another, I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm struggling to think of other plot lines and everything. Like I said, this is kind of a big episode that really just serves to establish a lot of things, or reestablish a lot of characters. That's what I was going to go for. Reestablish characters, catch up with them, really catch up with the characters, and introduce a couple other ones, and then kill them off in a weird vision thing. But L11, she is in California. She's going to school with Will, and she's getting bullied. And there was a really, like, that scene where she, like, I felt really bad for her during her little presentation thing, because that's just, I mean, that is a deep fear of mine. That was a deep fear of mine in high school, because I would be terrified of public speaking, and here I have podcasts. But anyway, I would be terrified of public speaking and everything. So that, you know, would have made me just mortified. So I felt for her in that moment. But the relentless bullying and everything is just really just another avenue that just, it hurts me to see that. Like it's a bummer. It's such a bummer, and it's horrible. But when 11 tries to use her power and she can't do it because she stopped, I can't remember the specifics, but she can't use her power anymore for now. I felt for her too. Like, that felt really just sad, and like, that lack of power is really good. I will say, Will Byers, man, the guy playing him, I can't remember the actor's name who plays Will. Yeah, it's Noah Schnapp. He's doing his best. I kind of feel like he has been kind of a weakling throughout the show, but I think he did okay. I like that it's kind of a strange pairing to have him kind of be 11's only, like, real confidant in California. But it works. But he's just always been kind of a little bit of an unassuming character, and I think they're really building up to the reveal that he's gay, which is going to be an interesting part of the story, I guess. But I'm curious how that's going to be done and everything, if it is, or maybe they're kind of, I don't know, who cares? It's whatever it ends up being is what it ends up being. It's not really that big of a factor. So let's see what else. Lucas does the winning shot of the championship game in basketball, cross-cutting with shots of the kids playing D&D and finishing their campaign and doing a big thing. Honestly, that was fine. That was okay. That was a little derivative, which is funny because I walked on eggshells talking about how much the show is completely derivative of so many things consistently every season. But in this case, this just felt like a cliched thing. Like, oh, okay, a character is playing basketball and characters are playing D&D. Let's show them together so that we can kind of highlight how similar the passions are, or how similar it is in terms of a competition and everything. And I will say that even though I didn't really take to that, I thought that it was kind of just low-hanging fruit and everything. I did appreciate the huddle aspect of it when the D&D group get into a huddle to figure out if they want to really take on the evil whatever from the game. I liked that because it did give it that visual flair of looking like a basketball team and looking like a sports team and everything. That's all well and good. That's fine. That's enjoyable. That's fine. I just think that the pairing together or cross-cutting between the two things, it kind of screams stereotype to me. Like, it seems like, oh, these two things are different, but look how similar they are. It just felt a little bit just antiquated, not very interesting or anything. I don't know. It just felt like a lazy kind of cliched point to make, but I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I'm not sure. So, I don't think I'm sure I'm forgetting several things, but I'm going to kind of start to wrap this up a little bit, but I do want to talk about the ending and this new question mark monster. I don't remember if we've seen this type of monster before, but it is literally going into the psyche of characters, or at least one character so far, and using that to, get them to, I guess, lower their defenses or let them in more, and then murdering them. Like, the death of Chrissy was really interesting because of the concept and everything. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but something like your suffering is over and all that. I don't know what the end game is. I don't know what the purpose of that is. I don't know necessarily how I feel about about the monster being able to speak English. Like, that feels a little bit weird and unlike any other monster from the Stranger Things universe thus far, or from the Upside Down. But, well, no, I guess not, because the Mind Flayer could speak at least through Billy, if I remember correctly. But this is just like a straight up like, oh, hey, Chrissy, how's it going? I'm gonna murder you now. But yeah, cool. Like, it just felt a little bit, I don't know. It just didn't really sit that well with me. But like I said, that sequence was really cool. That was a really interesting death scene. I'm curious to see how it's going to go, because I did say that, okay, it's kind of similar to Billy in Stranger Things 3 and how he was kind of possessed, and then throughout the season he does all of these things as a person possessed and everything. Here we have the death of a character right in front of the eyes of another character. Like, it's not this secretive thing that's going to be dragged out for episodes. It's not going to be this thing where it's like, oh, now we're going to see Chrissy and she's possessed by this monster, so she's going to be doing all these things. And then in episode 3 or 4, we're going to get, everyone realizing like, oh, Chrissy is compromised or whatever. It's not like that, because we have her death immediately at the end of this episode, and being witnessed by a character is really, really interesting. And I'm hopeful that means that they're going to do a solid do a solid job of telling the story and everything, even though it is gonna be derivative of A Nightmare on Elm Street. I can tell it's just, that's a bummer. That's just too bad, but we'll see. Hopefully it's good. 4 seasons into the show, I'm just sick of, them dressing up iconic things. It's the same thing I had, the same problem I had with and why I only watched the first season of American Horror Story, because each episode kind of was built around an iconic piece of horror storytelling and everything, and it just got really tiresome, and it felt unoriginal and everything. So I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. Overall thoughts on the Hellfire Club: I'm intrigued. I think it's a very good introductory episode. I'm curious, despite my better judgment, about the connections to A Nightmare on Elm Street and what the nature of this monster is and what the main purpose is and everything. Also, I did forget to mention that Joyce received a doll in the mail from Russia, and she had, inside it was a note that saying that Hopper's alive. Like that, curious to see how that's going to play out and everything. It really is an expansive story, because we've got characters in California, we've got a character in Russia, we've got characters in Hawkins. It's going to be an interesting season, because hopefully that all convalesces and they join together sooner rather than later. So I don't know. But I think that'll just about do it for this episode. Let me know what you thought about the premiere of Stranger Things 4. And again, if you are listening to this in the future and you are listening to this in preparation for Volume 2, and you're listening to it on the main feed on obsessiveviewer.com, please consider going to Patreon, going to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron, so that you can get my reviews of the last 2 episodes when they come out, and tons of other content. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. So I'll be back soon with Chapter 2. Until then, thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you for supporting us, and I'll see you in the next review. Hello, Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting us and for listening to us and for giving us money and everything. It's incredibly appreciated, and I can't believe that people actually do that. But anyway, thank you guys for supporting us. I am back with my next installment of my Stranger Things Season 4 coverage, and this is covering Episode 2, titled Vecna's Curse. And this is coming a little bit later than what I anticipated it to be. I've had kind of a busy week and everything, so I haven't had a chance to really watch Stranger Things properly. So I watched this Friday night, the Friday after it was released. So I'm a week behind on watching it, where everyone has already binged it and everything. So I'm gonna try to catch up and get all of these done and everything before, well, I mean, in a reasonable amount of time, because my plan is still to post all of the episodes, all of the reviews together in one big Obsessive Viewer episode in the lead up to the last 2 episodes that are coming out July 1st. But anyway, now it's June 4th, I think. It's after midnight. It's 12:30 a.m. and I was just so amped to record my thoughts on episode 2, because my God, this episode just really, really, I wouldn't say necessarily blew the doors open, but it really makes it's a very strong second episode. I remember, I mean, it's been a week, but I enjoyed the first episode. I thought that it was, I think I said that it busts the storyline pretty wide open, because we have Hopper in Russia, but we also have Joyce and several of the kids in California, and then Mike, well, not now, but because Mike is in California, but we have, oh my God, why can't I think of her name? Natalia Dyer, in Hawkins, and Well, yeah, everyone in Hawkins, Dustin, Lucas, all that. So we have all of them in Hawkins, and we have a murder. Like the last episode, the way the first episode ended was Nancy. Nancy's her name. Why can't I think of her name? But anyway, so the way that first episode ended, it ended on such a banger of a note that to bring us into episode 2, we needed something to kind of sustain that energy level, and we got it pretty well throughout this episode. I'm really not feeling. The lengths of the episodes are not necessarily a stumbling block yet, but I'll get to that in a bit. But basically, this second episode really is starting to come together a little bit. The story, the whole story and everything is coming together a little bit clearer. That kind of ending moment of the episode where Dustin and Eddie and the group kind of come to the conclusion that, it's Vecna's curse. It's like Vecna's curse, and Vecna is a dark wizard, and he's overpowered and all this stuff. And then we see, Vecna, whatever the monster's name is going to be, it's probably still Vecna, kind of collecting souls and collecting energy and everything, in a weird, thing where, there's tentacles that are attaching to him that's giving him, I assume, powering him like a battery. And then we see that he's, in what seems to be the upside down version of a dilapidated house, which, according to the promotional materials and everything, I believe that's the Creel house, because we get a little bit of detail about Victor Creel, which I'll talk about in a bit, but I want to talk first about Hopper, and we get some detail about what happened to him in the aftermath of the finale last season. And it's fine. That's probably, to be honest, the Russia aspect, the Hopper aspect of it all is not my favorite part of the show so far. It's very much, it's on the back burner. And I think that's where it's spreading its subplots a little too thin. Because we have Joyce and Murray trying to get Hopper back. We've got Elle and Mike and Will dealing with their teen angst and teen drama and everything. And then we also have Nancy investigating the murders and everything. Then we have Dustin and Steve and I almost called her Maya. Robin, played by Maya Hawke. And Eddie and all that, dealing with all of that. And then we also have Lucas with his new friends, who are convinced that Eddie is a devil worshipper who murdered Chrissy. So there's a lot going on. There is a ton of stuff here. And then we now also got the backstory of Victor Creel, who murdered his family, and he was locked away, and basically the shortcut version of that is that he's like Hawkins's version of Michael Myers. And so I'm going to try my best to go through as many of these subplots as I can, but I will say that the Russia aspect, the flashbacks, were not that interesting because I did not feel like it landed in any significant way to advance the story. All we really learned through that is that he's imprisoned in Russia, and that a guard is offering to release him or save him in exchange for $40,000. There's not enough there to really advance that storyline because we already knew that he was in Russia. We knew that he survived. We saw the how of it, and that was fine. There's no way to really make that engaging when we already know that he's alive and everything, and he's incarcerated in Russia. Brett Gelman as Murray is, I love that guy. I think he has such a fun energy. But even in this episode, I kind of felt like his his whole like shtick was a little bit underserved, or it was like the show was kind of relying on his comedic timing in order to kind of advance the story a little bit, and or to keep us engaged with a sort of lackluster subplot. And that's kind of a bummer. That's kind of a bummer to see, because I really like Brett Gelman, and when the story works really well and he's accentuating that story with his humor and his kind of offbeat, kind of kooky attitude and everything, that works like gangbusters. But here it felt a little uneven and not to my liking. So I'm curious how that's all going to play out and everything. And I'm really hoping that things come together. Because like I said, there is a lot of disparate plot lines to kind of deal with. So next, let's go. Oh, and I also forgot to mention the whole Jonathan and Nancy thing as well. So that's even more plot lines and everything. So let me move on to let me move on to the California aspect of it. Let's first talk about Jonathan and Argyle, like, I saw a tweet from, I think it was Alan Sepinwall, who said, like, did a poll that was like, when you're watching Stranger Things Season 4, did you automatically assume that Argyle was named in an homage to John McClane's limo driver and Die Hard being Argyle? And, like, I felt like that's a foregone conclusion. Like, that's pretty obvious. Like, I don't think that there's a way that he's not named after him. That actor, by the way, who plays Argyle in the show, he was in, a lot of stuff. Like, he's been in a lot of stuff recently, and some Netflix stuff as well. But he's fine. He kind of seems like he's very much typecast, and so I don't know, but it's still a joy to see him. He was in Booksmart. It's still fun to see him pop up and everything, but he just has that quintessential stoner vibe throughout like that's his shtick, and I don't know. I mean, it's fine. But anyway, we learn that, and I can't remember if we really learned this in the last episode or not, but we learn that Jonathan has been accepted to the, I guess, community college that Argyle is going to, and this kind of revealed that, like, he's being aloof and distant toward Nancy because he doesn't want to go, or he feels that he doesn't want to go to her college where she wants to go. Maybe this was all covered in the last episode, but anyway, he doesn't want to go follow her to college. He wants to stay in college here where he's close with his family and everything. And I liked Argyle's like response to that, saying that, oh, so you're lying to her. Like, what's the game plan? Like, you're being an ass. And he like, it comes down to him wanting to basically slowly break up with her because he feels like they're on a track to be just like his parents, and it's a vicious cycle and everything. All that's good. The whole stoner aspect for Jonathan and Argyle is a little, it feels a little bit cheap. Like, it's a little bit unearned, maybe not unearned, but it feels like it's just playing it up for comedy, and it doesn't, I don't know. It's a weird vibe. I don't really like it. So that's basically all we got for them. But elsewhere in California, Mike has arrived to visit Elle and Will, and it's very clear that I feel like they're really setting up that Will is kind of secretly in love with Mike, and I find that really interesting. And I would find that more interesting if Noah Schnapp had a little bit more to do emotionally. Like, he has a couple of good scenes where he's talking to Mike and explaining that Elle is lying to him, and explaining like how he's been a third wheel the whole day and everything. Like, that was good. But everything else that he did in this episode was basically just, it's like he was directed to look look annoyed and look lonesome and longingly at Mike and 11, and it didn't feel like there was enough emoting there. So I don't know if that's a criticism of his acting or the directing or what have you, but it just or the writing for that matter. But it didn't feel like it was it didn't feel like they did enough with his character in this episode. So I'm sure that they'll expand more on it throughout the season, but I kind of wish that there was a little bit more there. But it is pretty clear that they're setting it up that he's a closeted homosexual and that he's maybe in love with Mike. And I'm curious how that's going to play out and everything throughout the season and when it'll come to a head and everything. I do think it's interesting because you can also read it as him still being a closeted homosexual and then looking at Mike and 11 in that longingly way. Like, I believe that it's setting it up that he's in love with Mike. That's pretty clear that that's what it is. But then another read of it could be that he's just longing to have a connection like Mike and 11 have. And I would be good either way, but I'm curious to see how the drama and everything will unfold with that, if it is an unrequited love storyline, because Mike has been written throughout the series, at least starting with season 2 or 3, as a very selfish kind of character. Here he is lightened up a little bit so far. He's very 11 focused and everything, but he has had a run of selfishness throughout the series since season 2, really. So I'm curious to see how that will come to a head whenever he and Will have a moment, presuming that they do. But elsewhere with this, aside from that, his relationship with 11 is really this was a very painful episode. Not negatively speaking, but it's a it was a kind of a tough watch because of the empathy and because of the cringe factor of it. And I think that that's a really good is really positive sentiment to levy at it for the writing and everything, because they captured 11 and her bullies and everything in such a just heartbreaking way. And again, I will say that again, Stranger Things is very much owes a debt to Stephen King and a lot of 80s things. But I mean, it's Carrie. This is Carrie. This was Carrie in this episode. And I found it just so heartbreaking and terrifying, really, at the end, because it creates I feel so terrible for 11. I feel so much empathy for that character and the kind of tragedy of her wanting to the excitement that she had for having their day, when she's yeah, I have the whole day planned out. We're going to do this. We're going to get burritos. We're going to go to Rinkomania, and we're going to roller skate and everything. And then the added element of her saying that oh, you'll have to meet my friends and Angela, and all my friends here, and I'm having such a happy life. And it's so painful because she's not lying to him out of anything malicious or anything selfish on her end. She just wants to put up a front that she's having a happy life and everything, when deep down she's really not. And she doesn't want him to be concerned about her. And I just think I think that the character work in that is really, really good. I think that there's some really good character work there, and Millie Bobby Brown is phenomenal in this. She's been phenomenal in these 2 episodes and in the series as a whole. So when she is confronted, or when the bullies come to the roller rink, and she tries to maintain that front. And then when we get the kind of Carrie thing, the Carrie situation and everything, where she's ridiculed, she is pointed at, laughed at, and she has her milkshake thrown on her in front of everyone, in front of Mike. That is mortifying. That is mortifying and like just really, really sad. And then so like the show has created this intense empathy, and we've had hints of, you know, things in her past at Hawkins Labs where, you know, it's heinous, horrific things that she's done, a horrific thing that she's done, presumably. And we get a quick flashback of that with Matthew Modine saying, like, what have you done? Because we're kind of seeing this very, like, this kid who previously had very dangerous, like, superpowers and abilities, now without that, and with the added element of hormones and emotions and teenage angst and everything, she now feels underpowered without her powers and everything. So it's painted as sort of like maybe an empowering moment for a brief second, but then she grabs someone's skate and then hits her in the face. And it was so jarring for me because it's bloody, it's violent, it's horrifying. And the whole time, like, the whole episode, I'm thinking, like, yeah, these bullies need to be taken down, like, several notches. They need to be dealt with, and I can't wait for them to be, like, I was thinking, like, oh, it would be awesome if she gets her powers back, and then she terrifies them and everything. And then a part of me was also like, I'm scared because, like, the emotion of the bullying and everything is going to cause her to Hulk out and have uncontrollable, like, bursts of her powers. But what the episode does is, instead of doing that, it has her do something violent as a normal human being. And I think that is very, very interesting. And I'm curious to see what the fallout of that is going to be. Because they did not shy away from the blood in that. And I thought that was really, really well done. And it really, it scared me for 11, and it scared me for whatever's to come. So yeah. So elsewhere, let's talk about Hawkins and the fallout of Chrissy Cunningham's death, which I believe, speaking of character names being references to things, I want to say that Chrissy Cunningham has to be a reference to the creator and kind of gatekeeper of the Friday the 13th franchise, Sean S. Cunningham. I feel like that has to be a reference, but I don't know. It could just be, it has to be a reference, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm less confident of that than I was of Argyle being a reference to Die Hard, but that's neither here nor there. So we get the fallout of the, like, kind of reveal, or the town of Hawkins kind of reeling from the murder of Chrissy Cunningham. And this, again, I don't remember if I said this or not, but this, in this episode at least, this show has steered so far into the pure horror genre that it's tricky. It's almost too much, but I still really like it, so it's maybe not too much. But it, like, when we see Chrissy's wounds and we see her body, when the military guy comes in in the helicopter and everything, like, it is graphic, it is horrific, it's intense, it's very intense. And then, like, the fallout of this murder is that, or this death is, we get so many characters involved but separate from each other. So we get Dustin and Max and their group hunting Eddie. And I really like that. That's a big chunk of the episode. And we also get a little bit of Robin and Steve talking about their love lives. Like, I will say this, when Robin was talking about her crush laughing and how she didn't know what to say and she had nothing more to say and everything, and she was freaking out, like, in that moment I was like, I want to see, like, maybe not a direct spinoff, but I want to see Maya Hawke get like an indie romantic comedy drama movie, because I think she would nail that so well. If she hasn't already had something like that in her filmography, I don't know. But anyway, she's fantastic, and so we get their back and forth about that, about their problems with relationships and everything, and they go to track down Eddie. I like that, as it's kind of like a lower grade of characters teaming up a little bit. But what I really, really like and respect about that is that at the end, when they're explaining to Eddie what's going on and they're explaining like the curse of Hawkins or whatever, it's like in that moment where it's like, okay, this is the group bringing someone into the fold. And it's just, it has me really amped and excited for whatever's to come, because I really like Eddie as a character, and I'm curious to see how the story is going to unfold. I'm a little nervous, obviously, because, scary, but, and I don't want anything to happen to the characters, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. But, so I thought that was really good and everything. I really like the way that they tracked down the drug dealer that Eddie was hiding with, because they just looked at his family. They looked at the first name, Rick, I think, and they looked through the family video accounts and looked at the current rentals or the rental history. I thought that was really fun and clever, and everything. Also, well, I'll save that for later, but let's just move on to Lucas and the basketball team. So I thought that this was a nice callback, I guess, to season 1, or to really the first episode, where the dude from This Is Us, I think, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Taserface, I think is him. I think it was him. But anyway, when he gets it's Barry's Burgers or something, Benny's Burgers, I think. So now we see that we're back there, but it's a vacant building where high schoolers go to drink and party and everything. And I thought that was a really interesting way to bring that piece of Hawkins back into the story. But we get the kids are all kind of like hungover, or at least Lucas is, and we see that, like, they're talking about how, I guess Jason is the guy's name, his how Chrissy stood him up and everything. Then they find out that someone died. But the thing that I loved, I think that actor is really good, because when the cops come and he's talking to them, like when he kind of flips out and he's thinking that someone or he's wondering if Eddie hurt Chrissy, like the energy he brings to that's really, really good and really, really awesome. And I loved the reaction of the cops, because it was just like, oh yeah, this isn't our guy. We just really messed up his day, basically. But also on that same note, the way that the show is incorporating the satanic panic is so freaking cool. I am very much interested in this and very much eager to see how it plays out and everything, because I'm so thankful that it wasn't just a thing that they paid homage to, or that they referenced like a cultural reference that they made in the first episode. It feels like it's going to be a running thing throughout the season, and I am so here for that. I'm very much excited to see how that comes into play, because that's just a piece of, history and media sensationalism and fear-mongering in the news and everything that I'm just so interested to see play out in the show, and see how they handle it and everything. I'm just very, very curious about that. So elsewhere in Hawkins, Nancy and her very much doomed partner, the nerdy guy, I don't remember his name, but he is done for. He, like, holy crap, this plot line, with Nancy taking him to the trailer park to try to get some tidbits and get some information about what happened, that I again, this is just a really interesting angle for the whole show, for this season in particular, because I just found that to be really interesting. And I was kind of a little lukewarm on the whole Nancy's a reporter, but she's not taken seriously. And that kind of seemed, while authentic, it seemed kind of a little cartoony, or a little bit melodramatic. I get, maybe not melodramatic, that's not the word I'm looking for, but something that it just didn't come across as seriously written as it maybe could or should have been. So I was on the fence about that. And then you throw in the nerdy guy, who I'm afraid I can't remember his name, who is kind of trying to weasel in on Nancy and Jonathan's relationship, and kind of trying to, like, he clearly has like feelings for her or something, but she's not having it. Like, that dynamic just didn't work for me in the first episode. And even in this episode, when they're in the car, like, it doesn't really mesh well with me. But when they go to the trailer park and they see, and the cop stops them, and she's trying to talk her way into it, which also I really appreciate Natalia Dyer. I really appreciate her acting in that, Natalia Dyer. I really appreciate her acting in that, because it's very, very awkward, and it rides the line so close to being like poorly acted. But what it achieves is she has this nervous energy that is based on inexperience in what she's doing, and she's trying to be serious, she's trying to be mature about it, and it's coming across as more anxiety and anxious and nervousness than anything. And I think that that's really interesting performance from her, because that's such a kind of fine line there. So really interesting performance there. But the scene where the cop is talking to the nerdy guy, and like you get that full like dream sequence or terror sequence, really, where we get like this backstory of this kid being in a car accident and like causing, like, the guilt of him like causing death or something. It, like, that kind of hit me, like, kind of threw me for a loop, and kind of came out of nowhere, but it was really welcomed and interesting and horrifying. And then I was like, throughout the episode, I was just kind of like, okay, I hope they're not going to drag this out and have him be that. But no, they just up and killed him in this episode. That was just nuts. Absolutely nuts. Really good stuff. But we also get the backstory of Victor Creel when Nancy is talking to Eddie's uncle. And I think that that's interesting. It's weird, because I am kind of predisposed to really like that type of story. That type of plot line in horror fiction is usually like, again, I'll use this word again, gangbusters for me. It is usually right up my alley. But here it just seems a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't really feel, it feels like a little bit just not that interesting, really. I mean, when you have 3 seasons of the Upside Down and monsters and alternate dimensions and all of this crazy stuff to then somewhat shoehorn in this backstory of this guy who murdered his family and being like kind of a local like folklore, like legend, urban legend for the town. It just feels like it feels like it's just down. It feels like it's down on the priority list. And it kind of sucks because I know who plays Victor Creel, and I'm very excited for that, but I'm ashamed, or I'm bummed that I know, because I think that would have been a cool surprise. But anyway, and I know that that's the house that the Vecna whatever is in. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll be interesting when it comes more into light, but it's competing with this pretty captivating and very tense and scary kind of premise as well. So I'm curious how that'll kind of blend together. What else? I feel like I'm completely missing maybe an entire plot line, but I can't remember. I do have a point to make, or I do have a thing to say. So I had mentioned in the last episode that it was very much that episode was very much evocative of A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's funny because my girlfriend Jess, she watched the season before me. She's finished the season. She's done with the entire season. And she had mentioned to me that there are elements of the season that reminded her of a movie that came out last year, or a couple of movies that came out last year that were horror that she knows that she and I both saw. We did not see together. And like, I've been racking my brain thinking like, what is she like what? I can't even think of any like horror movies. And then suddenly I just like, it dawned on me like partway through this episode, I was like, oh, Fear Street, the Fear Street trilogy from Netflix, which is interesting because Sadie Sink is in that as well. But I totally get that. And I'm kind of curious. I'm going to reserve as much judgment as I can until I see more, but it does feel a little bit, if not derivative, it does feel a little bit too close to it, because now we're saying that like we're kind of depicting Hawkins as a cursed town, and we have like this backstory of murder and everything, and it feels a little bit close to being derivative of something that came out last year. So I'm kind of curious to see if those connections will be made for me going forward as well. But I don't know. For right now, it's kind of on thin ice. It's a little bit on thin ice. The show is in that regard. So I think that's just about it. This episode was just really, really something, and it really has me just pumped for the next 5 episodes really. And I will be talking about them and posting them on Patreon as I go through them. So I'm gonna start playing myself out. That's Vecna's Curse. I'm excited. I'm glad that Eddie Munson is back in the game, but we'll see what happens. I'm very excited for what's to come. And once again, thank you guys so much for listening and for supporting us on Patreon. And I will see you in the next review for Stranger Things or whatever I post. Hello and welcome back to my Patreon coverage for Stranger Things. Today I'm going to be covering episode 3 of season 4, which is titled The Monster and the Superhero. And I actually watched this episode last night, and I'm recording it in the morning, so hopefully it's pretty fresh. I don't know. I'm also brewing coffee, so just on the off chance that the coffee maker makes noise, that's what that is. This episode, again, I'm really, really feeling this season. This season is something like this episode was a little bit of a downturn, but for the most part, I am still really enjoying the season. We saw the return of Paul Reiser as, oh God, I can't remember his character's name, but he, like that opening sequence where his wife is in the kitchen, and then you see the kind of rumbling of the dishes and everything before the helicopter descends upon, the house. That gave off such strong kind of Close Encounters of the Third Kind vibes. Like, it looked like it was an alien spacecraft, basically. And I thought that was a really interesting and evocative imagery for the show. And there was something about the way that the show kind of depicted the helicopter, because there's a few scenes with it with the military people. Just the color palette was really, really interesting. I don't know, I don't know if it was strictly a stylistic choice or if there was some thematic meaning behind it, but it was really, really cool. Just in terms of just pure aesthetics, it was incredibly cool. Just very cool looking. So that was a good introduction to the episode. Of course, since this season has so many different, locations and like the characters are all spread out and everything, it's a little I'm gonna have to kind of hit each point as I can remember them and everything. So let's start with Hopper, because I'm still just not interested in the whole rescue mission or anything. That kind of feels a little bit, I don't know, it just doesn't really work for me. It's not very interesting to me, especially because basically the entire the whole crux of the plan to get him back is, we're giving some random guard $40,000, and then he's gonna get Hop flown out of Russia or whatever. Fine, okay. I'm positive that that's not how it's going to play out. I'm positive that they're going to do something else with it, that it's going to be something more complicated than that. So I'm going to reserve a little bit of judgment there, but it just doesn't feel like it's that important so far. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to kind of play out and everything. So we get some scenes with Hopper and the guard kind of conspiring, and then Hopper he offers bread and then eventually his soup to another prisoner to hit his foot. And I had thought that he was asking him to break the chain for him, but no, he was hitting the foot so that it was grisly, so that he could slide his ankle out from the chain, I guess. Fine. It was gruesome. It was disgusting. It made me cringe quite a bit, but I'm curious how that's going to... I'm curious what the kind of resolution of that's going to be, or the end game of that's going to be. So that's basically all we got with Hopper. We got Joyce and Murray going to Alaska, which was a lot of fun. I said last time that I really like Brett Gelman in this show, and he's phenomenal in this. When they all have dinner together, and he I don't know, there was just something about his energy that I really liked. When he's like, I don't know who this kid is, talking about Argyle, and then he's like, I still don't know who he is. That was really fun. And when he's like, oh yeah, I know what's wrong with them because they're stoned out of their minds. That was a lot of fun. That was just a lot of fun. And speaking of the stoned out of their minds thing, I mentioned in the last episode that I wasn't too crazy about the kind of stoner Jonathan and Argyle thing. In the last episode, and I think that was because it was talking about a serious character thing with him and Nancy and everything. Here, though, it was it had so much charm and fun baked into it, because, no pun intended, but had so much fun and charm baked into it because it really felt like from the opening or from the beginning where Argyle and Jonathan are driving them back from the skating rink to the dinner scene, like the back and forth between Jonathan and Argyle is just so much fun, and it's so silly. It's played so well. Like that's the kind of like stoner comedy that I like. Like that's a lot of fun, because of that contrast between them being stoned and people around them not being stoned. Like that's the kind of stoner comedy I like. And now I enjoyed that quite a bit. There were moments in, particularly in the van scene, where it kind of felt like they were 100% channeling, particularly I think Rory Cochran's performance in Dazed and Confused. Like Argyle like feels exactly like Slater in Dazed and Confused. I would be willing to bet money that he patterned his performance after that performance, because I mean it's too close. But so then the rest of the kind of California plot thread is predicated on the kids being kind of on their own, and that I found pretty interesting because Joyce and Murray go to Alaska, so they're literally left alone and Jonathan is left in charge. And then that's when Elle gets arrested and they have to, deal with that. And that I felt was okay. The whole aspect of them having to go to the precinct and ask what they're doing with 11 and everything, like that was good. I liked the franticness of that. And I also, like, if I could backtrack a little bit, I really liked the scene with Mike and 11 where he's like, where she says that he was afraid of her and he said, no, I was surprised, and I think you're the most incredible person on the planet and you're a superhero and stuff. And like, I really liked that. I thought that was very charming, but I also really, really liked Millie Bobby Brown's performance in this episode. Really, it's very subdued and understated, but it's really good. But when she says that Mike doesn't understand what it's like to be bullied, because he's trying to connect with her and say like, yeah, I've been bullied my whole life, I understand what it is. And she says, no, you don't understand, because I don't belong. Like, I don't belong anywhere. People treat me like I'm the weirdest thing in the world. And that I found just really, really not necessarily sad, but the kind of the deep characterization of that, I don't know, that just felt very genuine and really sad, honestly. So yeah, I will say that it's pretty sad, but I really got what 11 was going through and what she was trying to communicate. I thought that was just a really good scene and everything. And I appreciated Mike's attempt to comfort her in that moment, but even that is probably not enough and everything. So I like that, but then I also, for that whole plot line, I don't know what their next step is, what Jonathan and Will and Mike's next step is. It kind of feels a little bit weird that like now the whole point of this episode was Mike saying that he is going to get Elle out of that. He's going to rescue her. He's going to get her out of it. It's going to be fine and everything. But by the end of the episode, she goes with Paul Reiser and is talked into kind of abandoning her friends for the greater good of defending Hawkins and destroying the monster and all that stuff. But it kind of seems like, okay, well, now Mike and Will and Jonathan are kind of left in the lurch, and now we have these characters in California that are disconnected from the main story. And even though it ends on that note where the government people show up and everything, I don't know what the next step is there. Are they going to take them back to Hawkins as well? I don't know. I kind of hope that's the case, because I really hope that this season takes these disparate storylines, like that are across like the planet, basically. And then I'm hoping that by the end of the next episode, they bring them all together, and that like somehow all the characters end up back in Hawkins, and that's what, leads to the big war against the Upside Down and everything. I'm hoping that that's the case. Maybe that's what's going to be saved for the last 2 episodes in July. I don't know. But as of right now, I kind of hope that the government people are like, yeah, we're going to take you back to Hawkins because, the monster. So I'm hoping that that's the case, but I don't know if it'll be as clean as that. As far as Paul Reiser and the diner scene with 11, there's something about that I just really, really liked. The dialogue that Paul Reiser has, where he is basically laying it out for 11, saying that like there's a war coming, the monster, like this is the reason that you were trained for this, like this is the reason why you are who you are, is to defend this. You are a hero, and like that, it came across as genuine. It came across as surprisingly genuine and not nefarious or underhanded or anything like that. But it also just makes me nervous because I don't know if they're setting up 11 to be a tragic, character who's going to sacrifice herself for Hawkins and the world, really. I just need a sip of coffee. Anyway, so I really don't know. There was just an element of, well, a little bit of Stephen King quartet stuff there too, because Paul Reiser's telling her that like that it's your choice, but I really think that you're the only hope for Hawkins and the world, really, because this evil needs to be contained, and you have people who will help you. And we have that montage of the cutaway of Hopper trying to get out of the ankle thing, and then all the other characters. So you have people who will help you and everything, but it's ultimately going to come down to you. And like, I just love that. I thought that was like a rousing speech that really kind of, honestly, I'm shocked that it's episode 3 out of a 9 episode season, 7 episodes that are available now, because this felt like the penultimate episode of the season before the big finale. Like it felt like that, but obviously we still have a lot of steps because she needs to get her powers back and everything. And there's the, Deus Ex Machina special program that he's developed and everything. So fine. But also not to be too dismissive of that, because that's actually a really good, not cliffhanger, but a really good kind of breadcrumb to leave, because he's saying like it'll bring your powers back. If it works, it'll bring your powers back and even more powerful than before. And like remembering the emotional and mental and energy drain that the powers of 11 had on her makes this even more dangerous and interesting to me. Although we do keep getting these flashes of what I assume is the massacre at Hawkins' lab, which is the title of the final episode of this batch of episodes. So we're going to get the full details at the end of the season, or at the end of this chunk of episodes. But I'm very curious how that is going to come into play and everything. I'm kind of wondering if they're going to do. No, I don't think they'll do like a cross shots of like her fighting Vecna with memories of her fighting them, because they've kind of done that a lot in the show, I think. So I don't think they'd go that far and everything. I don't know how episode 7 is going to shake out and everything, especially knowing that there are 2 more episodes that are going to be coming shortly. So I think that that's all for the California crew. Yeah, it's fine. That's maybe the weaker point of the season for me so far. But back in Hawkins, we get kind of the reunion of Nancy and the other group. And that, again, that is another element of kind of really fun joining together And I love this. I love this type of storytelling where it's like a big problem that several characters are trying to work out, and then they find each other and come together and they lay out the information together. Again, it's kind of it's reminiscent for me of Stephen King, in terms of like his quartet storytelling and everything, but for the most part, it's just a really engaging like type of storytelling for genre storytelling like that. But in addition to that element, or in addition to that fact of them coming together and it being reminiscent of Stephen King, it also like and I'm hesitant to make this connection, but it also feels a little bit reminiscent of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. And I'm hesitant to make that connection because I haven't seen Dream Warriors in many, many years. But it is one of the more celebrated Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and it's the movie where several characters kind of band together to fight Freddy Krueger in the dream world. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so effective and it's so well renowned, because it's such a cool concept and everything. So we get here in Stranger Things, we get Steve and Robin and Dustin and Max. Yeah. I don't think there's anyone else there. Teaming up with Nancy, and they're kind of just delivering, like they're just delving into all of this information and everything. They're working out what's going on, and just the dialogue is fantastic. I absolutely loved the dialogue of them talking, like when they're in the trailer park, and then Joe Keery, man, that dude, he just has this energy to him. I think that they've done so well. They've done such a great job of writing him as a kind of sympathetic but and funny heroic character in their own way, and it dates back to like season 1 when he's like defending the kids and everything from the Demogorgon. Like it stems from that. Like that was and it's permeated throughout the series. Or was that season 2? I don't know. But anyway, no, it was season 1. But like that whole, all of that is just like he's grown so much, and that character is so just fantastic. And so to have him say stuff like have these like little like asides where he's where he's like, yeah, yeah, like, you know, maybe it's the trailer park, maybe this is where it's all, you know, centered in. And he's like, well, should we be here then? Like, I don't think we should be here. Just like very casual and fun. And then also I love the just energy of it. Like when he's in the car and he's like, oh, like always the babysitter, always the goddamn babysitter. Like that is, I love Steve Harrington. He's fantastic. And Joe Keery plays him very, very well. And we get some good stuff with Dustin as well, where he's kind of talking about it, the curse, and about Vecna and the spells and everything. That's a lot of fun. Just like that, again, that group dynamic where each person has their own different perspective on it, and then the dialogue coming together, sharing those perspectives and everything is really, really fun, really engaging. And so throughout that, we have basically it leads them to go to the psychiatrist or guidance counselor, and Max has to get some information from her, and she steals her key. So then that leads them to the high school to find the file, which is great. All of that stuff is great, and I love the just darkness of being in the high school and like that isolated, like creepy stuff. Like this episode didn't have quite as strong a horror bend, because it kind of seemed like a little bit of a not really, it didn't seem like oh God, what like a filler episode or anything, but it did seem like it is bringing the horror element down a little bit so that we can advance the characters and advance the story through the narrative and everything, while also giving some big reveals throughout the episode as well. So that's all well and good. Like, I really like that. And the stuff that we did get is very, very compelling and interesting, which I'll get to that in a bit. I'm talking specifically about Max's kind of revelation, which we already kind of knew, or I think I already kind of knew that she was kind of being targeted by Vecna, mostly because everyone's talking about the running up the hill or whatever scene, and I've seen like a little bits and pieces of it. So I hope that I'm not spoiled on that, but I'm very curious to get to that moment. So yeah, I don't like, that's literally all I know is that the song Running Up the Hill, I think that's the song title, is played, and I see there's a shot of Max running. So that's all I know. So anyway, so the yeah, so okay, so they're at the school and everything, and they're going through the files, and that's when Max realizes, like, oh, these are all my symptoms too. Like, I'm now probably targeted and everything. And then it ends on that note of, you know, her wandering through the halls and seeing the clock, and then then we hear the voice of Vecna saying, Max. That's very creepy. And then the end of it is just his eyes opening, which, okay. So, and I'll talk about the other kind of things that Lucas's kind of group too here in a second. But I saw an article, like a headline, and I hate to drag the show or anything, but I saw a headline where it was like this is like look at how Vecna was influenced by, or this is how Vecna was influenced, or an homage to the Night King in Game of Thrones. And I'm like what? I didn't read the article, but I'm like, okay, yeah, how yeah, I mean, like, how much detail can possibly be in that article? Because basically what it is like Vecna is just, it's not really a ripoff, but I mean, he looks just like the freaking Night King, like from Game of Thrones. So like, it's not really something that I don't think it's another indication of Stranger Things kind of borrowing from other works a little bit, which I will get to that as well here in a moment. But I don't know, so that kind of bugs me. But that was a good way to end the episode, though. Elsewhere, or also in that same kind of thing, we have Nancy and Robin teaming up to go to the library and research Victor Creel, which I'm very excited about that, because they uncover that it's not that he didn't murder his family or anything, that a demon did, and that Vecna has been around, or his victims date back to like the 1959, I think. And I just really like that. I really like that in terms of kind of uncovering a conspiracy, or uncovering something. I really like that kind of investigative nature of it. Again, it kind of feels like this type of like serial killer demon hunt story, and I think that they did it very well in this episode. And I also really like Maya Hawke's performance. She's very, very anxious and very kind of wiry, and I really like that element of like, I have no filter and I don't really pick up social cues all that well and everything, and she's worried about how Nancy perceives her, and how Nancy perceives her and Steve as well. I just really like that energy. Like that pairing up is really good. So, and it feels like they're kind of setting up that, you know, Steve and Nancy will get back together, and that Jonathan will, you know, break up with her, or that they'll break up. I don't know. So anyway, yeah. So I think the kind of other thing, Lucas and his jock friends, that was fine. It makes me nervous, a little bit, because like they are very much out for blood and everything. And I thought that Lucas was going to betray where Eddie is and everything, but they did a good job of kind of doing that. It's an interesting kind of like undercover kind of storyline. Even though it's kind of just based on Lucas wanting to be included in the cool group and everything. So that's all well and good and everything. Yeah, I'm just kind of waiting for Lucas to join back up with the group, because I'm not really that interested in the jocks and everything. Although I think that they like the the makeup and the wardrobe of them is just perfect 80s douchebag characters. Very like that very I don't know, it's very satisfying. Like it is exactly an archetype, a stereotype, and I love it. I love it. So that's good. I don't really have much else to say about that. The final thing I want to talk about is that, again, I hate to drag the show, but I feel like the show very much owes a debt to Stephen King. I've said that for years at this point. And what's interesting is like the first season is very much Firestarter. That it's Firestarter through and through, with elements of It and the Losers Club of It in particular. So that's great. That's fine. But they're still pulling from that well. And what I mean by that is that the Victor Creel house and Vecna being kind of using that, or at least the upside down version of that house as his base of operations or whatever. It's very much, it's the house on Neibolt Street from It. It's that. It is exactly that. And that bothers me a little bit. It bothers me just a little bit, because it's again pulling from that well of established, well done fiction, and it doesn't seem all that original for Stranger Things. And it's just, I hate to see Stranger Things continuously pulling from established properties, and I don't know, it just bothers me a little bit. But the concept of Vecna and what he's presumably doing, like infecting the townspeople so that he gets energy and everything, is cool. Like, it's very interesting and intriguing. The other thing, and I'll kind of start wrapping up. The other thing is that the jock character that he kind of mind melds into and everything, that didn't have any resolution this episode. I thought that was interesting. I kind of expected that it was going to be like a big deal. But I'm sure that they're saving that for next episode, and that this was more to show the jocks, doing their thing and going after Eddie. So I'm sure that it'll be a pretty interesting reveal when that character gets, murdered viciously. So that should be interesting. So maybe that'll be what brings Lucas back into the fold, and what convinces Lucas, like, oh yeah, Eddie didn't murder Chrissy. It was an upside down thing. So I need to go back to my friends, and we need to work together to stop it. Yeah. So I don't know. Well, that should just about do it. The other thing is that I really liked the scene where they're kind of talking to Eddie about what's going on, and like Robin says something like, yeah, we've all handled, like they've done this more than I have, and I've only done it once, but yeah, we'll do it. We'll get it done. So I don't know. I just kind of like that reflection of the history of Stranger Things and everything. I thought that was really good. So So yeah, anyway, I'm going to play myself out because, I've got nothing more to say about episode 3, The Monster and the Superhero. Really liking this season so far, and I hope you guys are liking these reviews. So let me know what you thought about episode 3 and about this recording, and I will be back soon with my thoughts on episode 4, which I don't know the title of, but I will be back soon with it. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next recording. Hello and welcome back to my review series on Stranger Things that's exclusive to Patreon, except for at the end of the month when I'm going to put it all together as an Obsessive Viewer episode, probably. That is still the plan. I don't know how I'm going to do that with how long it's going to end up being for 7 reviews, about 30 minutes each. It's going to be a lengthy episode, but I do appreciate you guys supporting us on Patreon and for listening to all the crap that I throw at you guys. So I do appreciate that. I am now on episode 4. I just finished episode 4 of Stranger Things season 4, which is titled Dear Billy. And this was a very, this has been a very memeable episode. It has been in this episode, or at least the needle drop in this episode, has gone viral since the show premiered the season. And for the most part, I get why. I mean, I get why. But I kind of feel like the song choice is what has gotten the most acclaim out of it. I think that's what the primary focus has been, is that, oh yeah, this song was used, not the fact that it's a very pivotal, emotional and terrifying sequence and everything. So I don't know, I'm kind of mixed back and forth there. It's not really an indictment of the quality of the show at all, because the show itself, that's basically a reaction. So, like, my reaction to that is based on the internet reaction, so it has nothing to do with the actual content of the show. So, Dear Billy, this was overall a solid episode. It feels like the season is still kind of on that downward trajectory from the last episode. The last episode was kind of like filling in the gaps or bringing more things into the picture and kind of filling in the story gaps so that we could get to more pivotal stuff. And I kind of expected the pivotal stuff to be in this episode, and it is for the most part. Like, I mean, we get the Victor Creel stuff, and we get some very very good backstory. We have a little bit of a flashback in that. We get the resolution or the disaster of Hopper's escape, and Joyce and Murray, their whole thing. Also, Jonathan, Will, and Mike are in danger, and Argyle with them and everything. So it was a big episode for moving the plot forward. What I kind of am at an impasse with is that we got nothing with Jason and his group. So, like, the character who I almost called him the Night King, the character who Vecna, who he possessed in the last episode, that still is a dangling plot thread. That still hasn't been resolved or anything. And we didn't get anything at all with Eddie Munson in this episode at all. It was all the core characters and everything. So it kind of feels like the season took a little bit of a stop here, and it took a little bit of a breather, specifically to focus in on Max's character, which is great. Like, the Max stuff in this episode was really, really strong, and Sadie Sink did a phenomenal job in this episode. I think her performance was fantastic, and credit to the show, I did not know what to expect. And kind of with the benefit of hindsight, now that I finished the episode, I can definitely tell, like, oh yeah, there was no way they were going to kill her off. Not in this episode. They were not going to just have her be the third victim of Vecna or whatever. That just wasn't in the cards. But what TV shows tend to usually do in this type of Vecna, it's Vecna, not Vecna, sorry. What shows tend to do in this type of thing, this type of story where we have several different subplots going concurrently, and it's leading toward a potentially tragic conclusion, such as this. So here's an example of what a tired trope of a TV show would have done. And I have my criticisms of Stranger Things as a whole, but credit where it's due, they did not do this, and I was thankful for it. But basically, what TV shows would normally do in this type of instance, where we have several different subplots going concurrently, and each subplot involves something big and something big and pivotal in this episode, when they all kind of reach, if not the conclusion, then a different stage of that subplot in this episode. So when we have those several plot threads going concurrently, what a normal TV show, or what a more tired TV show would do, is it would basically spell out the plan. So if this were kind of a more conventional show, or something on network TV perhaps, it would spend the entire episode just making sure that Hop's escape is like a sure thing. And then they would build up Max's demise and make it seem like she's about to die. And then when she doesn't die, they would switch over to Hop and his escape and all that going to hell. What this show did wisely, instead of doing that, instead of leaving Hop's rescue or escape and all of the stuff in Russia and Alaska, leaving that for the end of the episode, for the very end as a cliffhanger, what this show did was it resolved those threads and Jonathan and Will and Mike's thread as well before getting to Max's big moment. And what that did, and I find it pretty impressive in terms of storytelling, is what it did was it made the audience, like, it really put the chips down. Like, this episode was brutal. We got there were a couple of moments, like the two big moments with like Hop getting recaptured, and Joyce and Murray getting drugged and everything, and then also with Will and Jonathan and Mike leaving and everything. All of that, like those moments, like that felt like the game over scene, like a game over. Like, well, also like it's like Bill Paxton's line in Aliens, like, it's game over, man, game over. But no, it literally felt like a video game end screen, like, oh, you lost, like video game, like game over, start over. So that's the kind of feel that I got, and I liked that. I thought that was really strong and really good, because it threw me for a loop a little bit. To talk more specifically, I'll do the Russia stuff first. So Hopper escaping through the like tool shed. It seemed, I mean, it was a crazy escape plan and everything. And I like that we didn't really know what his actual plan was, or how detailed the guard was with him. So I kind of like that, I guess. But when he got the snowmobile, I was like, oh, okay, cool, he's going to be safe. So that was all fine and everything. But then when we get Murray and Joyce meeting up with Yuri, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. The energy that the actor that plays Yuri brought to it was a lot of fun. Very wiry and very, I don't know, kind of volatile would be the word that I would use to describe him and everything, and him not taking any of it seriously and everything. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And then the backstab, the double cross there was a very nice kind of twist on it, because I even said in the last review that I didn't know how the storyline was going to resolve, because it seemed way too clean. It seemed way too, like, we know too much about the escape plan. We know too much about the rescue. operation and everything. So it had to go wrong. And the way it went wrong was very satisfying because it leaves all of these characters kind of not wiped off the board entirely, but we don't know what the next step is. Like, I have no idea what to expect from this. I would not be surprised. I don't know how I would feel about this, but I would not be surprised if that storyline maybe isn't even fully resolved until the last 2 episodes. I could see it being kind of left hanging, but then again, I'm not sure about that. Because I know that the last 2 episodes that are premiering in July, the reason that they broke it up into 2 volumes, I believe, was because they weren't going to be able to finish the final 2 episodes in time. So they wanted to get the first 7 out and then the last 2 out when, after 6 weeks had passed. So I don't know. I don't have my sources on that. But anyway, so I could see them kind of like ignoring that plot thread for a little while, or at least not making it so prominent, which part of me is like, I'd be kind of okay with that because we have so much else going on. But also it would be just poor storytelling in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Either way, it would be interesting. I'm curious to see what happens and everything. Something kind of tangentially, or kind of to bridge the story between Russia and Alaska and the California storyline. Something I don't know if I necessarily dislike this, but it feels a little bit clunky. Is that, I mean, episode 2 or episode 3, the roller rink episode. That ended, it was, I don't know. Oh, yeah, it was episode 2, because I'm on episode 4 now. Okay, yeah, so episode 2, the roller skate to the face scene, like, that is such a huge moment. That is such a shocking moment. And now, just with a wave of Paul Reiser, it's none of that matters. Like, I do not believe we will see anything more with that plot line ever again in the history of Netflix original series. And I think that there's an element of maybe clunky storytelling there, because I get that the intention of that is to show that, 11 is still dangerous, or she is, if not fully kind of, acclimated to, normal life, she still possesses this anger in her, and she has this killer instinct and everything, which is going to serve her well, potentially, hopefully, in this war to come for Hawkins and the Upside Down and everything. But it's a lot of plot. It's a lot of narrative real estate to spend to make that point. And I don't know. I don't know where they're heading with that, if anywhere, but it kind of feels like when you have so many different plot lines going concurrently through different areas, different locations, different character sets and everything, that feels like it was given too much importance and just dropped, basically. So I don't know. It kind of just leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But to go into the actual California storyline, there have been some interesting filmmaking choices in this season. And I forgot to mention this, but in the second episode, there's this amazing overhead shot that goes from, I think it's Nancy driving, and then the camera cranes up and spins around to where the trailer park is upside down. I don't remember exactly how it happened or whatever, but that was really cool. That was really, really impressive. And then this episode, holy crap. We had the kind of government agents guarding or looking after, the 3 guys, at the house after 11 was taken to Nevada. Presumably Nevada. I read the plot summary for the next episode, but anyway, or at least the first few words. But anyway, they're being kind of looked after or held captive, whatever you want to say. And they decide we're going to help save Hawkins. We are going to do this. And then that's a tall order. They're in California. Hawkins is in Indiana. That's a tall order, but their plan is to have Argyle come get them, smuggle them out, and then they're going to go on their merry way. And like, there's some good comic relief with the two agents being very lethargic and like couch potatoes and just watching golf, the most boring thing you can watch on television, I'm sure. No offense to my golf fans out there. But anyway, they're just very lethargic, very couch potato-y and everything, and not paying attention. So the plan, I thought that whole sequence was executed so well. When it's interesting because they order the pizza, and then we get very cleverly disguising the danger, because we get the scene with Argyle driving, and he's kind of like I think he's singing along or something. I don't know. But anyway, we get Argyle driving, and then we get them packing and everything. And then we hear the knock on the door. It's like, oh yeah, well, that was quick. Well, 30 minutes or less. And then boom, the agents are under fire, and it's a full like battalion of military guys with weapons shooting and firing. And the coolest thing about that whole sequence was the first government agent goes down quick, but then the other one is he's eventually injured, but he kind of he takes out a bunch of them. Like he's kind of going to town. But what was so cool about that is that looked like it was at least filmed in a style to make it look like it was all one continuous take. And I love that. I think that is so cool. And given the fact that it's such a confined space and there's so limited structures to for them to kind of hide behind and everything, the way that the camera just weaves in and out and moves around, follows them around and everything, and reveals like the bad guys coming in from all sides and everything, just really, really impressive. Very cool filmmaking, and I thought that was just a really cool stylistic choice, and it really made the tension feel just incredible, specifically because I was not expecting that at all. Like when the doorbell rang, they even did the like doing like ding 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 like hectic doorbell thing. Like that whole time, I'm not thinking like, oh, it's not Argyle. I'm thinking like I was just sitting there thinking like, wait, what the hell is the plan? Like, they're going to get the pizza, and then the guards are going to go and check and like tell them like, hey, the pizza's here. See that they're not there, and they get like a maximum of 10 seconds of a head start to get out of there. But no, it just kind of like completely turns it on its ear and is something else entirely, and it's done so well. Very cool, very cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out and everything. And I'm definitely curious about that. So back in Hawkins, I'll talk about Max here in a bit, but I really appreciated the storytelling between Lucas. First of all, Lucas came back. I'm so glad to see that he got his head out of his ass, and he's back with the team. I'm glad that they didn't drag that out too much, and he's just perfectly fitting back in. So that's great. And he had some really good scenes with Max as well. So what they do in this show for like the majority of the time, or not majority of the time, but at the kind of introduction of that plot thread, is they spend so much time having Steve and Lucas and Dustin talk out the logistics of it and the logistics of what's going on. And it's so nice because these are questions that the audience should have as well. Like, okay, well, so the demon, so Vecna went after Victor Creel's family in 1959 or whenever, and then, but that was before 11 opened the gateway to the Upside Down. So why did he come back? Why did he go after them? Why was he there then? How did he get so he just kills one family and then leaves and then comes back now just to kill a bunch of random teenagers? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, yes, these are the questions that we need to ask. And like, these are the kinds of questions that a lesser, a show that isn't written, I gotta be careful because I'm not sure how exactly to phrase this, but a show that doesn't necessarily care for its storytelling would have just not addressed those things that directly by any stretch. And I have my complaints with the show. I have my issues with the show being derivative and everything, but when it has strong dialogue like that, and even kind of poking fun at the like illogical stuff in it, it works in its favor because it helps us. It's not asking us to suspend our disbelief necessarily. It's asking us to consider like, oh wait, why is that the case? Like, yeah, hopefully it will resolve itself for us, and they'll resolve it for us and answer those questions. But I just think that's really, really solid. I really like the writing there. So Max is writing letters, which I thought was a very nice a nice gesture. Like I like that as this kind of melancholy look at this kid facing her mortality and everything, and they have literally no they have no way of stopping it that they're aware of, and it's just like, it's such a shot in the dark. It's such like it's almost game over for them, and like that's like that little, we get like just a little bit of hope at the end when she's rescued and everything, but that's it. Like everything else is very bleak and very melancholy, and I really, really appreciate that and really like that. And I like how the letters really kind of inform her relationship with Lucas and the rest of the group, because Lucas calls her out and says like, hey, we're right here. I don't need a letter from you. I need you to just talk to me and talk about what you feel and everything. And I really like that. I thought that was a really cool scene and really good writing. And again, I'll get to the Max stuff here in a second, but I do want to touch on Nancy and Robin going to, I can't remember the name of the asylum, like Pinehurst or Penhurst or something, the asylum, to see Victor Creel. And of course I knew, because they announced it long ago too, that Robert Englund was going to be in this season, which is awesome. That is very cool casting. And I thought he did a great job playing that tortured, scary and scary, character, and like the makeup effects of his eyes were really cool, or lack thereof, really, just really cool. I really like that. If that's the only scene that he's in this whole season, if it's just like a cameo appearance, I'd be perfectly satisfied, because I thought that really delivered the goods and was really well acted. But even before that, like they're kind of the Nancy and Robin's play to get into meet with him was so much fun, and I loved that it obviously kind of depended on Robin coming through, because she has no filter and she doesn't know how to like do that, and it kind of is a nice extension of the scene with Nancy going up to the trailer park in the second episode, because she's not seasoned. She's not a seasoned investigative journalist by any stretch. She's still, by all accounts, still pretty much a kid. And this is all like not something that she's done for a long time, but she's kind of playing it. And then here we have her kind of flailing a little bit, trying to get to Victor Creel. And then Robin just comes out and it's like, has this just outburst of an amazing monologue that is so much fun, and Maya Hawke was fantastic in it. It was so much fun, and they win. They got a chance to see him, but even then they get, well, I mean, they make it out and everything, but that almost closed in on them too. They almost had a game over moment as well. Because they, like, the guy was like, yeah, no, I had a talk with the guy that you had a reference letter from, and you need to stay here and see the cops. And then, yeah, I don't know. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. Like, as kind of disparate as the different plot lines are, and disconnected as they kind of are at this point, sort of. They do kind of come together thematically a little bit in this episode, and I do appreciate that. So now we've got the big scene with Max, the big run up the hill or whatever scene with Max, and again, I was not sure how it was going to end. I didn't know how it was going to go. And I was all for it. I thought it was really well done. And when she gets into, first of all, we get a cameo from Dacre Montgomery, who played Billy, and I thought that was great. That was great. Fantastic. Good to see him in the show again. And having that play up this, after this incredibly heartfelt scene where she's talking to his grave, and then have Vecna's version of him, playing into her fears and regrets and sadness and grief and everything, is just really, really awesome. And then when she escapes from him and goes into like the upside down version, like the imagery of that was very cool. Like I loved the red tinting and the just chaos around it. It was really, really well done. I thought that was really cool. And I would say that on the surface, it seems kind of silly that like, oh, music is the key to getting to breaking the trance and everything. And like that is kind of goofy. There's no real way around that, but it's done pretty well in this scene, in this circumstance and everything. I guess like they explain it away pretty well. I guess, but it is still kind of silly. Just a little bit silly, but it also feels, again, like another kind of riff on a Nightmare on Elm Street thing. She even says to Vecna, she says, like, you're not real, you're not really here. I mean, that's literally how they defeat Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street. That's literally how it ends. So that was kind of another derivative kind of example from Stranger Things, but I don't know, like there's a very fine line between homage and derivativeness and everything, but I don't know. But anyway, the set design and the look and appeal of the upside down prison yard thing was very, very striking and very cool. And that's what I was saying. So it is silly. The music thing is silly, but I think it's important to note that it's not necessary. Like she I like that the show demonstrates that Max is strong. She's a strong character, and she is strong enough to withstand Vecna for long enough to have her friends rescue her with music. So I do like that. Like I can reconcile the fact that it's kind of a silly kind of way to beat the curse or postpone the curse, or what have you. I grant you that it is silly. It is a silly way to do that. But the fact that she escaped from Vecna and was able to get to the Upside Down, I'm calling it the Upside Down, I don't know. But to get to there and even have him ask her, like, why are you doing here? Why are you doing here? What are you doing here? Come back to me or whatever. Like, that's just, I really like that. That's kind of showing a weakness for the villain that I really appreciate, because we haven't seen that yet. And I'm just very curious to see how that kind of plays out. She even temporarily injures him when she's running away. So I thought that was pretty interesting and telling. So the final scene, the final like shot of the episode was very cool. Having her levitating and then dropping down, and then them huddling around her, and then the sky kind of changes. I don't know if it's because she's back from from the Upside Down and from this other world thing, or if it's just nightfall and everything. But just the way that the scene changed, and then it fades out as we're kind of ground level at the bottom of the hill, looking up at them all huddled together. I thought that was just very cool imagery and really strong visual storytelling, and a nice kind of release valve for the tension, and gives us a moment to kind of breathe and relax. So I liked it. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this episode. I know that a friend of the show, Robert in Utah, mentioned that he can't wait until I get to that scene or that episode or that moment. And I wonder if this was that. In which case, I was not disappointed. It was very cool, very cool. So I enjoyed it. So I think that is about it I don't know where the show is going to go from here. I have 3 episodes left for this batch, and then in a few weeks we get the last 2 episodes of the season, so that should be exciting. All right, well, that will do it for this Patreon exclusive, temporarily, review of Stranger Things Episode 4, Dear Billy. I'll be back soon with my thoughts on Episode 5, which is, I believe, called The Nina Project. Yeah, and there was no 11 in this episode either, so that was kind of a bummer, but, so many plots, so little time. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next review. Hi Patreon, and welcome back to my review series on Stranger Things 4 Volume 1. If you're listening to this on the Obsessive Viewer podcast, thank you. And check out more of our stuff on Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And yeah, if you're listening to this on Patreon, thank you so much for supporting us and for listening to us and everything. Really can't thank you enough, and I hope that you guys are enjoying all of the content we're throwing at you on Patreon. So tonight I just watched. It's been a little bit since the last segment. I just watched Chapter 5, The Nina Project from Stranger Things 4, and I took a little bit of a break from Stranger Things after the big running up the hill whatever episode. And this episode did not do much of anything for me, to be honest. I mean, it was fine. It was fine as a kind of connective tissue to what I hope will be a better last half of the season, basically, or a better, last half, because we have the last 2 episodes and then Volume 2. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that this is just kind of a connecting piece, because, oh man, the seasons or the episodes are longer. Obviously, this is like an hour and 15 or hour and 17 minutes, and that's fine. I'm all for that. But when you have characters that are in completely different settings, completely different plot lines running concurrently, that have really no bearing on the other throughout it, when you're 5 episodes into that level of storytelling, it gets pretty tired. And I was kind of tired from this from this episode. And I'm going to make a joke. I'm going to make a joke, so prepare yourselves. This episode, two of this episode's subplots were the Losers Club going into Neibolt Street, the house on Neibolt Street, and following the deadlights to find the evil and everything. And the other subplot was Charlie McGee being taken to the shop and trying to escape after discovering her powers. Again, it's so derivative of it and Firestarter and everything. It's just so derivative this show is, and it's really starting to get on my nerves at this point. Because I took like a couple of weeks off from watching it and then came back to it, and then we have this, and then even like the pop culture references of like Dustin referencing Nightmare on Elm Street, like that is all well and good, except that they're using like some of the stuff from Nightmare on Elm Street to as a kind of vessel for the horror of this season. So, and even the stunt casting of Robert Englund is there too in that respect. But like, it just feels like it feels like they're just riffing on something, like trying to have their cake and eat it too. And like, there was a part in this episode where I was like, I wonder if the Duffer Brothers and other producers on the show, I wonder if they were like rewatching like 80s horror movies and thought like, oh, let's do this for Stranger Things 4. So I don't know. It's whatever. So the I'm going to try to go through each subplot, but it, again, there's so many and they're so disconnected that it's a struggle. It is really a struggle. There were some good episodes in the first batch, but this has been a struggle for me this episode. It took me a while to actually finish this episode because, well, I had other stuff going on, but I was trying to focus on it and I wasn't as enraptured by it or into it as I would like to be. And that's just such a bummer because we had such a cool episode in the previous episode and now we just have this playing catch up on the plot and not really doing anything really that interesting, to be honest. It's I don't know. So let's start with, I guess, 11. I'll start with her plot line. She is brought by Owens to a bunker in like the desert where they have the Nina Project, which is basically a pool for her to like the precog pool in Minority Report to get her to remember. It's very vague and it doesn't really matter to me all that much, but what it is basically giving her a view of her past. And that's the problem that I had with that. This felt so lazy to me. It felt so lazy that we have this like mystery, I guess, baked into 11's subplot throughout this entire season of something that she did at Hawkins Labs. It's the title of the final episode of this batch of episodes is The Massacre at Hawkins Labs. And so there is a mystery about that. And so when we have this extended flashback sequence where she is in the pool trying to get her powers back or doing whatever for Matthew Modine and for Owens, it just feels so lazy to have that be this weird flashback backstory to her at the start of her time in Hawkins Labs or whatever, and like showing other kids. Like I didn't really connect with that or care about it really at all. And just the idea of it being used as a flashback, an excuse for a flashback narrative when it's set up as this is how you're getting your powers back is just so lazy and uninspired, really. And that was just kind of a downer to me. So let's see, where else should we go? Because we have to go all over the planet at this point. Let's talk about, Hop and the prison guard. They have this scene where now the prison guard's a prisoner and Hop is hopping mad that the plan didn't work out. And so he is kind of bearing his soul to the prison guard, now prisoner, talking about how like, oh yeah, I got drafted into war and then just did chemical stuff with Agent Orange, and then everyone that I knew started having kids that, you know, were all that were varying degrees of having birth defects or just dying. And then I had my daughter, and she was perfectly healthy, but she died, and my wife left, and basically going through and telling us the stuff that we learned in season 1. I don't know if the Agent Orange stuff was known or anything, but as great as that scene was for David Harbour's like Emmy reel, it didn't give anything to me. It didn't, like, that whole plot line did nothing. Like, there was no advancement in that plot line at all. And then kind of another thing with Joyce and oh my god, Brett Gelman's character. I can't even remember his name. Brett Gelman's character. They're on the plane with Yuri and they get the upper hand. They fight him. They crash the plane. Okay. Like, again, it's a segment of a storyline. It's a segment of a story arc. And it doesn't resolve itself. Like, it's just teeing itself up for the next segment. And it doesn't tell, like, a complete story on its own. I mean, I guess it does with Brett Gelman's character, facing it's all for comedic effect, but facing up to like his insecurities as a black belt and everything. That's fine. It's okay, but it didn't really do anything, and Winona Ryder had nothing to do there. It was very just really bland and uninteresting. And then to go back to, I already did 11, and I'll save the Losers Club for last. But in California, we got the federal agent, a shot of him alive in the house from the gunshot wound, and the government guy's asking him where 11 is or where they're going or whatever. Again, that didn't really do anything. It didn't resolve itself or anything. We didn't even see... Oh my god, this episode really, really tested my patience, and it's a bummer that I waited 2 weeks to actually watch the episode. But it really tested my patience because the California crew, as I am dubbing them, okay, first of all, Argyle, I like the guy, I like the character, but the whole, stoner shtick in this episode just did not work for me. It's just... It felt very lazy, very... getting on, intentionally getting under the audience's skin, when he's constant, when they're, when they have to repeat things to him several times before he does it. I don't know if it's a timing issue or if it's just a situation where they just didn't write it well enough, but every time I'm just okay, all right, the comedy isn't landing, it's just annoying. It's just annoying that they have to tell him to go off the road several times. It just didn't work for me at all. But again, that whole subplot, that whole plot line this episode did not go anywhere. I mean, it just advanced the plot line itself, so it did kind of do that, but it did nothing for the characters. There's one little bit where Will talks to Mike, and it's very, very heavily implied that he's talking about an attraction that he has toward Mike, saying that he he understands what it's like to want to say something to someone you care about, but being afraid of what their reaction would be and everything. I get that. That's fine. They do kind of lay that on a little bit thick, so I'm kind of curious if they're going to switch it around and have it be revealed that, oh, he's not actually in love with Mike. He's talking about something completely different, because it's a little too obvious and direct at this point. But even if they do kind of go that route, I'm still excited to see what that scene is going to be between the two of them, because I think that would be really interesting, and a really interesting dramatic moment in the show. So yeah, but the actual plot line, everything that happens, they bury the agent, and it's just a very loose clue to get to the next point. Oh, okay, we need a number for Nina, whatever, the Nina Project. Okay, there's a number. We found the number in the pen in the most ridiculous jump in logic I can imagine. And this is a show about an alternate dimension that lives outside, upside down from us. But Mike just saying well, that's weird. Okay, Argyle is gonna make a tombstone for this body we just buried, but he can't write with the pen that the dead agent gave him. Why would he give him a pen that doesn't write? Okay, well, that's a very big leap. Why? I don't know. That just felt weird. That felt weird to me. Because it wasn't he just specifically gave him that pen. He was dying and trying to get information to them. Anyway, they open up the pen, and yes, there's a rolled up piece of paper that has a phone number on it. So yeah, good. Advancement of the plot. Moving along. Great. So they find a payphone, and then they call, and it dials into a computer. So now they have to go to Utah to go to Dustin's girlfriend to see if she can hack it. what am I talking about? What am I saying? This is Stranger Things? Like, that just feels so weird. Like, that feels so weird that this is the plot line of the show this season. It is so out there and like not like anything that Stranger Things has done. It just feels so lifeless and not interesting. And this is coming off of the heels of a really good episode where they had a very cool shootout scene, which also is a little bit out of character in the show, but also a really cool, effective like character moment with Max and the Kate Bush scene. It's coming off the heels of that, and we get this complete downer of an episode that is so such a slog to get through that it's really, really bothersome. It really disappointed me, you guys. It really disappointed me. And I just thought of another plotline that I didn't have in my head when I started this. Again, way too many. So the Losers Club, aka Dustin, Max, Robin, Nancy and Steve, and Lucas. Anyway, that whole group, they've discovered that the house that Max saw in her vision was the Creel house. So they go to the Creel house, which also kind of feels like a desperate gambit at this point, but it's a little bit better than there's a pen and we should open up the pen and find a number in it. That kind of contrivance, but this also was like a little bit too much like, okay, the show just really wants to do its cosplay or its fan fiction in this moment. Because it's like, okay, like what are they like? They don't know what they're looking for. They call attention to that they don't know what they're investigating or anything, but it also doesn't really help that they don't know what they're looking for or anything. And again, at the end of this, we don't know what they find. We don't know what they like, what the next step is, because all they did was follow lights, to basically follow around Vecna as he's strolling through the house, apparently. It was pretty cool that it had that connection with the real world Hawkins, where Patrick in the douchey guy, preppy douchey guy, athlete guy's group, he gets completely annihilated by Vecna, which I did find that pretty interesting. I was glad that we got the closure of that, and we also got more Eddie Munson. He was like he's a shining star in this show as far as I'm concerned. He was really good. And so that kind of cliffhanger ending of Patrick being just destroyed, and then them being in the water and everything, that's compelling. That's going to make me interested in what's happening in the next episode. But honestly, this episode was just such a downturn, such a downer, such an uninteresting kind of just writing to get to the next big set piece, felt just so lazy and so uncompelling to me. So I don't know. I'm sure I'm forgetting other things, but I'm kind of, the agent people went to Eddie's trailer and like escorted his uncle out or something. I don't know what the deal is with that either. That was just one scene that had nothing to do with anything really. I don't know. This episode was a struggle. So, I'm excited to watch the last 2 episodes and then watch the final 2 episodes in a couple of weeks from now. But I've got to say, the Nina project did not really work for me. I didn't really even talk about 11 all that much. Because I did talk about her because of the flashback stuff. Yeah, that all just didn't really work for me. It felt, I don't know, again, lazy and writing to get to the next point in the story, which is not effective storytelling in my opinion. So, unfortunately, I'm just going to kind of leave this here. I'm going to start playing myself out. Oh, that is not the right sound pad. Wow. Okay, maybe this one is? There we go. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and play myself out. Thank you guys so much for supporting us, and let me know what you thought about the Nina project and a bunch of stuff that I'm sure I completely forgot about. So stay tuned for my next review, which is going to be on The Dive, episode 6. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hi Patreon, and welcome back to my reviews of Stranger Things for Volume 1. I am here tonight to talk to you guys about Episode 6, titled The Dive, which I just finished watching a fair amount of time after having seen Episode 5. That last episode, as you guys will know, I wasn't too keen on it, and by the end of the episode, by the end of recording that review and everything, I felt like a little, I don't know, I didn't really feel like watching more. So I took a little bit of a break from it, but now I'm back because I have 2 episodes left, and I want to finish it, and I want to be prepared for when the final 2 episodes of the season premiere on July 1st, and also because on June 30th, I'm going to release all of these recordings as an Obsessive Viewer episode, so I have a little bit of a deadline to get these reviews done and everything. So that's where I'm at with my kind of delay in getting this episode out and everything. But I finished watching the episode, and now I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. And I will say that it's a slight improvement. It is an improvement over the very, very steep downturn that was episode 5. It has good and bad in this episode. There is good and bad in this episode, and I'm a little bit hesitant about, the final episode, or I should say not final episode, but the next episode. And I don't know, okay, there is a lot to cover in this because there are so many different plot threads and everything. So let me start with the Russian plot line. It's coming into focus a little bit better. Hopper and the guard have been selected to basically be fattened up to be put to a fight against the Demogorgon that they have in the Russian prison. And I do, for as weird as this season is, as weird and strange and as unlike any other season as this season is, I do kind of like that gladiator sort of idea, and the way that Hopper he's kind of playing like the Quint character in Jaws. Like, he knows what's up, he knows what's going on, and he's informing the other characters that he's in the prison with that they're wrong and he's right, and they're doomed and he's doomed as well. So I like that idea, but I think in terms of the story and the season being so spread across so many different plot threads and so many different things, I am struggling to really care about what's going on in Russia. I'm struggling to care about what's going on with Murray and oh god, I always forget her name. Winona Ryder, Joyce. I'm struggling to care about what's happening with Murray and Joyce and Yuri. And it's a bummer. And then even, I'm getting ahead of myself in the review, but even the California crew heading to Salt Lake City, I mean, my God, it's like, it's a big nothing burger of nothing, and it doesn't satisfy anything. But I'm getting ahead of myself and everything. So, the Russian prison thing, I really liked the scene where Hop is explaining, that they're doomed, and explaining explaining that they're not putting them to the test. They're not testing the monster. They're feeding him. He is like, they are his bait and everything. Because if he gets bored, he's not going to eat, and he's going to look elsewhere or something like that. I don't know. But that whole plot thread was fine, whatever. The little fight that they have to try to, at first it seems like they're trying to manufacture an escape, but it's really so that he can get the lighter and he has the liquor, and they're going to use the fire to take down the Demogorgon. Fine, whatever. The problem that I have with this is that it doesn't connect. It has not connected in any significant way to anything that's going on in the season, aside from Joyce and Murray, which that plot thread also doesn't connect to anything else going on in the season. And it's just such a drag, because you have all of this stuff going on with 11, which also is a problem for me. And with Mike and Jonathan, and then with the group and Hawkins and everything, you have all of these things going on with Vecna and all of this stuff. And then we have to kind of just let that sit by the wayside while we do this whole thing with Hop in Russia. And it really feels like it feels like they wrote the ending to season 3, where Hopper is presumed to be disintegrated with the laser to close the gate, whatever. And then they, obviously it was always going to be that he would come back and he would survive it and everything, because there was obviously that post-credit scene in the 3rd season and everything. But it just seems like they just didn't know where they were going to take that. It seems like they were like, oh, it'll be cool if Hop, it seems like he's going to be killed. And then we reveal that, oh, he actually escaped through the Upside Down, and now he is a prisoner in Russia. Isn't that cool? And then I feel like they did that, and then they were like, oh, wait, okay, hang on. So season 4, now we have to write Hopper in Russia. Okay, what the hell? We're going to have to do all of this stuff. And it feels like a big disservice to David Harbour, because he's a great actor, but it just feels like there's nothing really for him to play off of, or the stuff that is there to play off of is a collection of things and instances and characters and everything that belong in a completely different storyline and a completely different TV show and a completely different property. And because of that, it just drags down the entire season, in my opinion. So I don't know. I'm presuming that they're going to have their big fight with the Demogorgon in this episode and in the next episode. I'm assuming that just because it's the end of Volume 1, but I also know that they released it this way so that they wanted to have time to finish the visual effects on Volume 2, and so I don't know if there's a thematic reason for them to end Volume 1 here, much rather than a production reason why, but I guess I'll find out after I watch episode 7. But yeah, I'm curious, but ultimately I don't know why it matters at this point, because I'm much more invested with the Hawkins stuff, which I'll get to. I'll probably save that plot thread for last, but everything else is just secondary and fairly inconsequential, and it's the same kind of thing that I had a problem with It Chapter 2. They gave the adult losers this whole fetch quest to get these tokens and go through the town and everything, and it felt just so lopsided and just not really that satisfying. And it's the same kind of thing here. I mean, we have spent this entire season with Hop in a Russian prison and Joyce and Murray trying to get him out, and that is an interesting enough premise on the surface. but it's also something that needs to connect in a significant way to the bigger story of the season, because it just can't just exist at the same time as, 11 regaining her powers and children or teenagers in Hawkins being brutally murdered by Vecna. Like, it can't coexist with that without connecting to it in any significant way. And it's just such a drag for me. Something I think would be cool that I just thought of now, though, is if in episode 7, when they are preparing to fight the Demogorgon, it would be kind of cool if it's a completely different monster. If it's like if it's like Vecna or something, or if it's a completely different monster that has nothing to do with the Demogorgon or anything, or it's a mind flayer or whatever. I don't know. Just to throw a wrench in the proceedings and everything, I guess, but I don't know. Otherwise, connecting to the Russia plot is, oh yeah, and they didn't really close the loop on that. I'll talk about that later, but is Joyce and Murray, and they've crashed in the Russian snow. I mean, okay, there are several instances in this episode. There are 3 that I'm thinking of in particular where it feels like they should have, I'll say this, it feels like they should have released Volume 1 with 5 episodes and spent the time finishing the visual effects for 6 and 7, 8, and 9. That's how I feel like they should have, because it felt like just that soundstage green screen effect anytime they were outside in a place that couldn't look like Midwestern America or what have you. So they had like this backdrop of the snowy landscape and everything, and it just felt very just not color corrected the correct way, or not lit properly or anything, and it just felt very, very noticeable. And then it also had that issue with Susie when she's on the roof and she's playing with doing the satellite thing or whatever. That just looked like a cheesy backdrop. It looked like a Roland Emmerich movie, and Roland Emmerich is notorious for that crap, and it looks bad. It looks bad. Elsewhere, there was a third example of that I'm struggling to remember now. Oh, it was in the boat. Yeah, when they were outside and they were in the water, it kind of looked a little wonky like that. But those aside, I don't know. That's a minor complaint. But Murray and Joyce convince Yuri to come along, I guess, to infiltrate the prison. Which all of this again, it just doesn't connect with the greater story. And also, like, I can't fathom how they're going to pull this off. And that usually is a pretty cool, like, indicator of, something to be excited about in a show. Like, oh, I don't know how they're going to actually get through this situation and everything, so my eyes are glued to the TV. On the contrary, this is a thing where it's like, okay, well, I don't know how they're going to do this, but it doesn't matter because everything that's important is happening in Nevada and happening in Hawkins, so I don't care about this. Like, obviously they're going to survive. Obviously they're going to get out of it in one way or the other. They're going to reunite and Hopper is going to get out of it, because what other reason would they have to have a full season of episodes be about Joyce and Hopper trying to reunite? There's no way it's going to end in any tragedy or anything like that. It's not going to, there's nothing there that's going to carry over if one of them dies or anything. There's just nothing that's not going to happen. So my emotional investment in it is just not really that strong, because I'm just waiting for it to connect with the greater plot line. I'm waiting for it to connect to something of significance in this story. And part of that is also the fact that it's so far away. They're in Russia, and it's so far away from Hawkins and everything going on, that there's also that at play. So I don't know, it's frustrating. And I mean, Winona Ryder is great, but it felt like she was a little out of her element when she's talking to Yuri. Brett Gelman too, because they're trying to do this, like hostage negotiation thing, or this captive person that they have, so that in trying to coerce him into helping them and everything. And the intention is that they don't know what they're doing, or that they're in way over their heads. That's the kind of implication and intention of the scene with Yuri. And so in that respect, it makes sense for them to play it kind of awkwardly and not very seriously. But also, it just doesn't come across, it doesn't ring true for me, like, at all. And it's just it was kind of weird. I at several points in that scene where Murray and Joyce are trying to convince Yuri to help them, and like threatening him and saying that, like, oh, I saw a bear and the bear is going to come and get you and everything. Like, that entire time I was sitting there and I was like, what is this show now? Like, what is going on? Like, this show started as this cool Stephen King ripoff based in a fictionalized small town in Indiana, and it played with genre, and it played with some really cool stuff. It was a lot of fun, and then it was very contained to Hawkins, and it built this whole mythology around the Upside Down, and Hawkins being an epicenter for it, and Hawkins being kind of at the Upside Down's mercy and everything, and this ragtag group of kids that get together. Now we're 4 seasons in, and we have characters in freaking Russia trying to break other characters out of Russian prisons, and like trying to get this smuggler to help aid them after he has betrayed them and everything. It's like, this is so far past left field that it just doesn't feel like it is the same show. And sometimes that can be a blessing. That can be a good thing in a TV show that runs for, multiple seasons and everything. To reinvent it is pretty cool. Like, that's cool to do that. But this isn't reinventing it. This is just spinning its wheels to get to a reunion that will eventually just get them back to the States, and presumably back to, well, they would go to California, or they would go back to Hawkins, and then they would be a part of the whole, like, war or whatever is going to happen. But I just don't care. I'm waiting for that to happen, but I just don't care at this point. Which, speaking of the war and Hawkins and everything, a few episodes ago, we had that really cool scene with Owens. Is that his name? Is that Paul Reiser's name? I think. I don't know. But with him and Eleven in the diner, and he's talking about how, like, okay, yeah, so war is coming to Hawkins. You need to protect Hawkins. It's all coming down to this. Vecna is the big bad, and you need to save him, and all of your friends are going to need to help and everything, and, it's a war and everything. And then from there, we get episodes that are built around Eleven having flashbacks and learning the truth about what happened in Hawkins' lab, which is good backstory to have, but it's also 4 seasons into the show. It feels less like a tantalizing piece of plotting that we get after waiting patiently since the first season premiered. It feels less like that and more like they are huddled around the room thinking, okay, well, we're 4 seasons in, or we've done 3 seasons, and maybe we should kind of focus on telling a story about Eleven being, in Hawkins' lab with Papa, and learning her powers, and, like, uncover some secret horrible thing that happened there. And it feels like retconning, and it feels just like padding the story. I get that there's a connection that's probably going to be made, that she is a violent person, and then that's why the whole roller skate to the face thing happened. And it's going to ultimately, my guess is that she's going to get her powers back, and she's going to uncover the memory that she murdered all of these kids, which it's pretty clear that that's the case. I don't know what the circumstances are going to be, because I feel like it's going to be something that is going to switch it around when we actually reveal it in episode 7. And be something we don't expect. At least I hope so, because it's very clear that it's just like, oh, she murdered these kids. So I don't know. I feel like they're setting it up to where 11 is going to have this guilt about the person she is, and then in season 5 she's going to ultimately sacrifice herself, which is fine. Like that's a fine character arc to write and everything for this teenage girl. But also it's just weird that they're doing this in the 4th season out of 5 seasons that this show is going to run. Like, I don't, and that's even, maybe that's not fair, because they did do the whole kind of backstory sort of thing with 11 in season 2, which that was a train wreck in my opinion. That just didn't work at all. And now they're doing kind of the same thing, but it's more about the Hawkins lab and everything. I just feel like past season 1, they have not been able to write 11 as an interesting or compelling character, save for season 3, which I remember being pretty solid, but mostly because it was all the emotional relationship and emotional rift between her and Mike. So I don't know, it feels like they, and her and Hopper as well, but it just feels like they don't know how to write 11 or where they're writing her toward, or they are writing her toward somewhere that is painfully obvious and going to be just something that kind of ends in a whimper in season 5 whenever we get it. So I don't know, that's all conjecture. I don't know, but I don't know, it just feels like it feels again like spinning wheels. Like it feels like it's spinning its wheels, and it just doesn't work for me. And another thing that I forgot to mention is that I don't remember what happened to Papa in season 1. I don't remember what happened to Matthew Modine's character, because I had thought that he was killed. I don't remember, and I'm too scared to Google it because I don't want to be spoiled on season 4. But apparently he wasn't killed. So fine, whatever. But I don't know, the whole like Nina project, or the whole uncovering the memories thing, it doesn't interest me, honestly. This is at least more in tune with the main plot of the story, but it's also like, okay, we need to run out the clock and get her to get her powers back, but we're going to do this over several episodes. We're not going to advance her storyline that much each episode, and then eventually she's going to get her powers back and fight Vecna and whatever. Fine, whatever. But it just feels so... it just feels like such a slog. It's kind of a bummer. So then let's talk about the California crew and them going to Utah to find Susie. This whole sequence, this was a sequence where I was like, what show am I watching? Like, this is so weird. The close-knit religious household that she lives in, and you know, and the weird cowboys and Indians thing, or whatever it was, the Native American playtime that they were having, and the whole contrived way that, oh yeah, well, okay, she can hack into this, which again, this whole plot line where they're trying to hack into this internet phone number thing, where they're trying to hack into it to get a location to get to 11, is busy work. It is busy storytelling. It is not compelling. It is not advancing the plot. It's just trying to get them to a specific point in a specific amount of time. So they have to pad each episode with just contrived things. So they have to contrive this entire like heist in this massive house with all of these strange kids roaming around kind of out of nowhere. We get some good comic relief with Argyle just immediately falling in love with Eden, which I thought was very funny and fun, but also doesn't really help anything with the main plot. It's such a weird storyline and such a weird episode this was. But yeah, so then they contrive a way to, like, she her father got mad because he found out that she changed Dustin's grades, and Dustin's an agnostic, so she got her computer taken away, and he's always working on his computer, so they need to do this whole diversion using all of the kids downstairs so that they can hack in and find the address and everything. It is all so convoluted and contrived, and just it is such a long, complicated walk to get an address for something that we learned about like 2 episodes ago. And it's such a drag. It is such a drag. And when we finally get it and everything, it's like, okay, now what is going to impede their journey to Nevada? Now they have the coordinates. What is going to get in their way to get to Nevada? Like, what's going to happen now? It's so, I don't know. And it was such, like I said, it was such a contrived way that they got to it. It is such a overly complicated and faux suspense sequence just to get to a like hacker archetype or hacker stereotype of like tapping the keyboard and saying we're in or I'm in, like that kind of thing. Ultimately, it meant nothing. In the grand scheme of things, and it's just stuff that just it's contrived. It's bad writing. I will go ahead and say it. It is bad writing, and they should be ashamed. So I don't know. That was just such a that just didn't work. And so I don't know what's in store for them in the next episode, but it's again very, very, very much spinning their wheels, and it's just not working for me. So I might be forgetting another plot thread, but let's just go ahead and dive in, no pun intended, since it's called The Dive. Let's dive into the Hawkins storyline and the one thread of this season that I actually care about. And I'm gonna approach this from 2 different points. One is the satanic panic thing. I have said since episode 1 that I'm really, really enjoying the way that the season is kind of taking that into account. The kind of overreacting assumption of like Satan worshippers and in communities and stuff, and how that's blamed for acts of violence and stuff. Like the way that it's coming together here is really, really satisfying and really good, with Jason addressing the town, kind of bogarting the police news conference or whatever, but kind of bogarting that and trying to rally the troops to go and face mob justice or to do mob justice on Eddie Munson. Like, I'm conflicted on this, but on one hand, it's satisfying. It's like I said, I'm really interested in the satanic panic angle of this season, and 2, it's a really interesting way to kind of play with that mob mentality kind of thing. It's a reflection of the world we live in today, and how, people can be compelled to do horrible things or, threaten democracy, whatever. Just at the rallying of an uninformed or moronic or misguided person. And I like that. I kind of like that. The problem, the thing that I'm struggling with that, is that as much as I enjoy the satanic panic angle, and as much as I enjoy that, like having that bit of texture to the plot and Hawkins and everything, it's done to better effect. Like that kind of communal like delusion is done to a much greater and higher effect in Midnight Mass. So, which is another Netflix show. And it's funny because I have long said that, oh yes, Stranger Things, it's basically cribbing off of a lot of Stephen King stuff. And it's basically if I'm having a bad day, I'll call it Stephen King fan fiction. But it is very much steeped in Stephen King stuff. Midnight Mass is from Mike Flanagan. It's his passion project. He's a huge Stephen King fan. Midnight Mass is like a Stephen King story that isn't written by Stephen King, and he does it in such a way that it is an incredible limited series. I absolutely adored Midnight Mass. And now it just seems, and I know that this isn't the case, but it just seems like the Duffer Brothers are like, oh, okay, well, we love Stephen King, and oh, hey, Mike Flanagan, he's doing the Stephen King thing. Let's crib from his stuff. let's kind of take some stuff from Midnight Mass. Obviously that's not the case, but that's just how I feel, and it just feels just so derivative and unoriginal to me. So I'm kind of a mixed bag on that particular plot line or plot thread. But yeah, so the Hawkins heroes is what I'll call them, I guess. They find Eddie and bring Eddie back into the fold, and they decide to go investigate where the gate to the Upside Down is. And as much as I enjoy this plot thread, as much as I enjoy this particular subplot in this season, I've got to give it a ding, honestly, because again, I don't know what the end goal is. Like, I guess their whole goal is, oh hey, we're going to go into the Upside Down and we're going to take down Vecna and we're going to save the town and stop all of these kids from dying and everything. That's noble. That's good. All that. They found a way to get to the Upside Down. That's fine. With the compass and everything, that was cool. I really like the bickering between Dustin and oh my god, why can't I think of his name? Steve. I really like that and everything. The really cool scene with Lucas and Max was really satisfying for an emotional kind of tether and everything. But ultimately, I'm like, okay, yeah. So they went out into Lover's Lane, or Lover's Pond, and they swam down, saw the gate, and now they know where it is and everything. So I guess they can regroup and everything. But again, contrivances, like having Steve just sitting in the water waiting for the tentacle to grab him is just, it defies suspense. It makes it so that we're expecting it. We know that it's coming. And it's just like they're not trying to hide it. They're not trying to do anything interesting in the storytelling with it. It's just a means to an end. It's a means to get Steve into the Upside Down, and then all the rest of them diving in to go after him. Fine. And that's a cool setup for the next episode, and I'm excited. I'm curious what's going to happen and everything. But ultimately, it just felt just a little hokey and didn't really connect all that well. Yeah, and then Dustin and Max and Lucas are kind of captured by the police. And I guess that's really where we ended. Where we ended is Steve in the Upside Down being attacked by these little, like, pterodactyl bat things. And it's, it's a little creepy and everything. And I almost made another joke, and I'll go ahead and say it. Yeah, Steve is in Toadash space being attacked by the Toadash monsters and everything, because the Upside Down is Toadash space from the Dark Tower. Anyway, in the mist. But anyway, yeah. So this episode was a slight level up. It was a slight increase in quality from the previous episode, which made me just like, it took some of the excitement of the show out of my, took some of the wind out of my sails for it. This brought it back a little bit. I'm hopeful that the connections, or that the plot lines will all connect and everything. I'm hopeful that will be the case in the last episode before the final two, July 1st. But yeah, but I'm kind of nervous that I'm going to lose more interest. So I'm going to try to watch that 7th episode tonight and get that posted for you guys tomorrow. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on episode 6, The Dive. Let me know what you thought. And again, if you're listening to this on the main feed, check out Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Got a bunch of really cool stuff on there. So, and if you're listening to this on Patreon, thank you once again. I really appreciate you guys listening and supporting us and everything. And I'm going to go ahead and play myself out. And yeah, so I will be back tomorrow, hopefully. I'll definitely be back tomorrow with my thoughts on the 7th and final episode of Stranger Things 4 Volume 1. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next recording. Hello, Patreon, and also Obsessive Viewer listeners as well, because this is the end of episode 374 of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. But also, Patreon got this early, which you guys all know that and everything. But anyway, I am here tonight to talk my way through episode 7 of Stranger Things 4, titled The Massacre at Hawkins' Lab. And as you guys will undoubtedly know, I have been kind of hard on the show the last couple of episodes, mostly because it just feels so directionless, so derivative, and it has a lot of things that are just not really working for me. And I've got to say that this episode kind of brought it back for me a little bit. There's still some issues with it. There's still some things that I don't really necessarily like about the show, but it really held my attention, and the way that it brought together certain storylines and plot threads was really satisfying to me, because as you guys know, one of my biggest concerns or one of my biggest issues this season has been how everything is so disconnected and so disconnected and not really talking to each other or anything. We have so many different plot threads from different areas across the globe in the show, and it's not really to my liking. And one of the biggest things that I think this episode has going for it is that we do not check in at all with Mike and Jonathan and Will in Utah, and that is a blessing, because that storyline was dragging so bad and was just so dissatisfying. And I think in the last episode, or in the last segment, I neglected to mention the FBI agent, or the government agent that's being interrogated and tortured for the whereabouts of 11. That's fine. That's interesting. It was done in this episode as well, that this episode shows that he gave up where she is and made them promise not to hurt her or not to kill her, I think. And that is fine, I guess. Like, that's the only connection we have with the quote unquote California crew in this episode. And again, it just feels like filler. It feels like it's getting the plot from one point to the next, and it's just a drag. It's absolutely a drag. But anyway, let's talk about the three main plot threads in this episode of Stranger Things. The episode 7, the final episode of volume 1. And let's start off by talking about how the episode opens with finishing off the cliffhanger of episode 6 with Steve in the Upside Down being, attacked by monsters from the mist. So again, just ripping off Stephen King. Like, they look exactly like the monsters in the mist, and it's basically the same idea. But anyway, he's attacked by them, and they're like, the group comes and saves him. All that part, like, I understand that this is a Netflix show. They have a budget and everything. They have to adhere to a certain budget and everything, and certain constraints. I mean, granted, but then again, Netflix has a ton of money, but it doesn't look that good. Like, the Upside Down, when they're in the Upside Down after going through the Watergate, which is that was such a delight when Dustin in the last episode referred to it as Watergate, and he was so proud of himself. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it just looks very soundstagey and very green screeny, and it wasn't to my liking. But the visual effects throughout the rest of the episode were pretty solid and pretty cool and pretty unique, so I can't really complain one way or the other. And from the sound of it, the promotional material, or the Duffer Brothers, the comments about the final episode, imply or explicitly state that it is going to be like a massive special effects thing. So that's promising. We'll know more in a couple of days when it's released. But yeah, so anyway, so this episode, I mean, we get the band back together. We get them all fighting off the monsters and everything. And again, one of my biggest issues with that plot line in this episode, or in this season, with these guys, and like, this is the most interesting plot line of the entire season, But my biggest issue is that they didn't have a plan. They just went into the Upside Down. They were going, like, what was the point of going out there to confirm that a gate was there, if not to go into the Upside Down? And they didn't have a plan to take down Vecna. It was silly. But once they're there, they resolve to get some guns, which I think is pretty cool. It's pretty solid. Pretty solid thing. And then we get the reveal that I thought this was really interesting, that the Upside Down is not the Upside Down in real time. The Upside Down is the Upside Down 2 years ago, from when, presumably the gate was first opened, or the Upside Down was first opened, which is really interesting to me. And I found that to be really compelling in the way that it just has that time dilation effect, which I love in science fiction. So I thought that was pretty cool. The other thing, and I'm going to kind of bounce around here, the other issue I have is the algorithm of it all. And this is indicative of a lot of Netflix stuff, that the Netflixification of, peak TV is all about the algorithm. Netflix has an algorithm, like that's why they, like House of Cards was made because the Netflix algorithm dictated that people wanted to watch David Fincher movies and Kevin Spacey, I guess. So, it's a thing. And so the Netflix algorithm in this case, it feels like there are two things in this season that just feels like Netflix went to the Duffer Brothers and was like, oh, okay, well, people like this part of the show, so include more of that, meaning Lucas's younger sister. People were like, oh, people loved her in season 3, so give her more stuff to do in season 4. And then, because of all of the memification of Barb in season 1, because of all of that, they're like, oh, well, tie this back in with Barb, because people loved Barb, and that was a thing in season 1 that I didn't get, people screaming about, oh, justice for Barb, who cares? It's just, I don't know, it wasn't something that I really latched onto or anything. But anyway, so yeah, the algorithm is kind of a thing that I don't really like when it comes to Netflix stuff. But anyway, yeah, so they go to try to find guns, and that's when they find out that the time dilation thing. And I really liked the kind of sense of wonder of them getting out of the Upside Down, or getting kind of finding the other gate, which let's go back a little bit. The reveal that, when Dustin realizes that, oh, the reason, his theory that there are different, that the reason that Vecna is killing teenagers and everything is that he's opening gates. He's opening gates to the Upside Down, to the real world. And each death scene is the site of a gate that's opened. I thought that was really cool. That paid off kind of the ambiguity of the Vecna curse, or Vecna's curse, the entire, it paid it off very well. And this was an episode that was really, really strong with payoffs of the different disparate plot threads and everything, across the board, really, because we get I'll talk about 11 and everything in a bit, but we kind of get a clear picture of what Vecna is, what his intentions are, what his duty is, and what his goal is, his motivations. And that's great, because throughout the season, he has just been a Freddy Krueger conduit kind of character, and he's kind of played a little bit second fiddle throughout the season because the show has been so bogged down with different plot lines across the globe and everything. And it just hasn't really connected with me in any meaningful way throughout the season. But the way that it connected here was very, very, very pleasant and preferable in terms of the storytelling. The storytelling in this episode, I will go on record and say, was very good. Probably the best of the season, in my opinion. And so they have the Upside Down and everything. They're in the Upside Down, trying to find things. I kind of like the exploration of the Upside Down in a sense, but it's more it's made more special by the end of the episode, which I'll talk about. But first, I'm going to jump over to the Russia plotline. And Hopper is, first of all, Murray and Joyce have arrived at the prison, and they are doing the prisoner transfer thing. Murray's great. Brett Gelman nails it. But again, that whole plot thread, even in this episode, just feels very, very... it just feels very out of the element, out of the realm of reality in the series. It just feels like it is something completely... It feels like it's coming from a completely different show. Like, when Murray and Joyce have the Russian guards at gunpoint, I'm sitting there thinking, like, are they actually going to shoot them? Like, are they actually going to kill these people? It felt very TV show, like, action heavy stuff that didn't really fit with Stranger Things, in my opinion. But Murray did kind of kick some ass, and that was pretty fun. But the Demogorgon part of it, with Hopper and the prison guard and the other prisoners, that I'm back and forth on that, because it seems like it's a regression. It's a regression to, like, the big bad of the first season, and it does feel like a little bit. It feels a little bit like they are trying to kind of mirror or parallel the big bad of this season with the Demogorgon from season 1, just to kind of show just how advanced it is and everything. So Vecna is a very formidable foe, and we see the Demogorgon, which was the big bad of season 1, and the kind of scale of it throughout the seasons is very apparent here. So it's pretty solid. It's fine. But I'm a little bit, it feels like a little bit of a regression, and that's kind of a downside to it. But the action, the fast pace, the quick pace, the gruesomeness, the grisliness of all of the deaths that the Demogorgon does in this episode are just, it's really satisfying. It's very cool. It does not shy away from it. It is very gory, very disgusting, and I love it. I absolutely loved it. And then we get the big finishing part and everything, which is fun. With the spear, that was cool. Yeah. And then the reunion of Joyce and Hopper, which I felt like was a little bit undercooked a little bit. Like, there's a moment where, like, Hopper's in a daze, and I love David Harbour, but he just felt like it felt like it wasn't that great of a moment until he started smiling, and it was good. It worked out well there, but it didn't really tug at the heartstrings or anything like that, or carry much emotional resonance for me. Mostly because it's pretty clear throughout the entire season that it was reaching to this point. Like, I never thought that he was going to die or anything. And they drug it out so long throughout the season. So maybe that's why it didn't really connect with me. But I'm curious to see what is going to happen with them now, because we get the issue of where are they now? What did they do now? Like, the main goal of Joyce and Murray this season has been achieved. They got Hopper. So where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Yeah, I don't know. How are they going to get connected up with the other groups in the show, and how is it all going to play out? I don't know. I have a little bit more faith that it'll be more interesting, or that it'll come together a little more cleanly, just because this episode does tie together several things. And that's when here's where I'm going to talk about the really long, lengthy flashback sequence with 11 and the titular massacre at Hawkins' lab. And with that, I've got to admit, I was not a big fan of all of the flashbacks in this season, all leading up to this, because, and I think I even said, like, it's clear that she's going to be the one that murders all of these kids and everything, and it's going to be a big reveal like that. Or I think I don't know, but I was also thinking at some point that, like, or maybe they're going to switch it around, but I don't know how. And it wasn't until the guy was helping her escape and, like, tipping her off on how to escape and everything, that I realized, oh, he's number one. He's the number one guy. He's number one with the one with a bullet. And that was, like, I caught up. I'm not saying that it was predictable or anything, but it kind of was. But I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that it was not until like that moment that I realized, oh, okay, yeah, he's one, and he's like super powerful and everything. And then it kind of created this cascade effect for me that as it's going through, it's like, oh, he's actually number one. Oh, he's the one that kills all these kids. And then like at that moment I was like, and so she's going to have to find him so that they can team up and take down Vecna. And then immediately I was like, no, wait, maybe he's Vecna. Oh my God, whoa, he's Vecna. And then, and so I was like steeling myself for 11 to throw him back into, or to throw him into the Upside Down so that he can become Vecna. And then I was like, well, wait, how does that connect with Victor Creel and stuff? Because that can't be right. And then like right then it's like, oh, he's actually Victor Creel's son, and like that was the whole thing. I mean, we got kind of a supervillain monologue scene from him that's very overly explaining every little detail to put it all together, which is a little bit annoying. But I think that the fact that it was tying together so many elements of the story all into one big package was very satisfying to me. It was something that really, really helped. So it didn't matter that to me that it was just an exposition dump, because it was tying off all of these loose ends and putting them all together and connecting the overall story this season in ways that I did not expect them to connect at all. Like to be frank, I kind of forgot about the whole Victor Creel part of it. Like I completely forgot about like the mystery of Vecna killing Creel's family and everything until it was brought up here. And I think that was a good like kind of switcheroo. That was a good misdirect for the season. And it also got us the stunt casting of oh my God, why can't I think of his name? Wow, Freddy Krueger. Why can't I think of his name? Yeah, anyway, we got the stunt casting of him, which was such a delight. It was one of the better parts of the season. But anyway, the reveal that the revealed Robert Englund, yes, thank you, Jess. She's right next to me. Anyway, yeah, oh God, I already forgot his name. Robert Englund. Anyway, so we got the stunt casting of that, and it tied together the storylines really well. And having the kind of dual narrative of number one, of Vecna, I'm just going to call him Vecna, telling 11 all of this history and everything while oh God, what is her name? Mike's sister. Nancy. While Nancy is going through the Upside Down and she's being caught by Vecna. Like that was just really cool. Her wandering through his house and his history and seeing the visual representation of the exposition that is being dumped out by this character in the Nina machine while 11 is taking her little nap or whatever, or doing her little precog thing from Minority Report, because again, show's kind of derivative. But anyway, yeah, seeing that dual narrative aspect was really cool. It was a really good way to kind of just really throw all of this new information at us with this visual in this visual kind of time or visual style. And so that was really interesting and intriguing. When Vecna tells Nancy, like, oh, you killed Barb, or you're the reason why Barb died and everything, that felt like, it felt like regression. It felt like fan service. It felt like, oh, people really loved the Barb stuff. That was a meme thing in season 1. So let's kind of pay homage to that, or let's remind people of that, because where Netflix is all in the nostalgia game, I guess. But I don't know, it was fine. But so they had that, just all of that information coming together was really great. And then we get the kind of big battle between number 1 and 11. I keep wanting to call him number 1. I guess I could call him 1, but technically it's Vecna. But anyway, we got Vecna and 11 in the room, and she, like, it's a really cool scene of these two characters that are fight, like they're going at it, they're fighting each other, And then we get the kind of personal moment where 11 is about to be killed, and then she remembers... So the visual style of this, the thing that happens is that she remembers being born, or she has a memory of her birth, which I don't think it's a memory. I think it's just her imagination that she was imagining being born and everything. And at this moment, I was wondering, the way that it was showing, and maybe this is the case, this could be the case, which if it is, it's very interesting to me. But when we see the shot of her kind of being born, her seeing like the, coming out of the womb and coming out of the womb and everything, like she's being birthed, the way that it's represented on screen, that hazy, fuzzy, kind of reddish kind of thing, looks like the Upside Down. And what I'm curious about is if they're implying that 11, while just absolute, like going full 11 at Vecna, if she created the Upside Down, because as he's being disintegrated and then the gate opens and he's like thrust into the Upside Down, we know that like we know now through this episode that the Upside Down is, I don't know if it's frozen in time. I assume it's frozen in time, but it's a frozen in time from 2 years ago to when, season 1, Stranger Things. So maybe I'm assuming that the Hawkins lab stuff is like very like right before season 1 starts. So maybe her pushing Vecna into the Upside Down is her creating the Upside Down as this prison for Vecna and creating the Upside Down as a static moment in time at that point. So I'm kind of curious if that's what they're getting at. If not, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just talking out of my own Upside Down, but it's something that I think I'm kind of intrigued by, and I think that could be an interesting thing if true, big if true. But I thought that was really cool. Like seeing the actual like kind of disintegration of him was really cool. And then the way that the episode ends with the kind of reveal, like at that point, it's like, okay, well, it's pretty clear what's going on. Like he is Vecna, he's going to turn into Vecna, but having that be the end of that episode first, I can see why they chose to make this the breaking off point for volume 1. I was a little nervous that this was going to be like a situation where they just needed time to get the last 2 episodes like finished in post-production, and that volume 1 wasn't going to have like a conclusive moment. But I think that this is a great way to end a volume of the season and then bring us into the final 2 episodes that are going to be massive episodes. And fortunately, I'm back on board. This season has been a drag for a large portion of the time, and it's been kind of not really that great for me, and it's really made me think a little bit about how I feel about the show as a whole. I don't like it that much. I don't think it's a very good show, to be frank. I think that it's entertaining, and it is very much playing on nostalgia for people, and it's playing on what is popular in like genre fiction and everything, which is all great and everything, but it is also not very original in its creation and everything. So I think that's, I don't know, maybe I'm a little harsh on it, but I will say that the storytelling in this episode is one of the first times this season where I felt like this is a very, very good a good storyline. It's a very good storyline. So that's great. Yeah, the downside of that though is I like that it's just contained to these like 2 or 3 separate plot threads and everything. Like that's great in this episode, but again, the big problem with the season has been that it is juggling way too many things, way too many locations, and the downside of that is that we get this really cool introduction like throughout the season, early in the season, and then it plays out throughout most of the season, that we have the whole satanic panic thing, which is something that I find really interesting in the background. And the last we saw of that was mob rule, like a mob kind of forming to go after Eddie. And like, there's no resolution to that. I don't know how they're going to resolve that in the next 2 episodes, but I'm hoping that it's not something that's just dropped entirely. But I mean, it kind of feels like it could be. So I don't know. We'll see in a couple of days. But But yeah, so I guess those are my thoughts on the Massacre at Hawkins Lab. Once again, just thank you guys so much for supporting us on Patreon. And if you're listening to this on the main feed, I hope you enjoyed this kind of peek behind the paywall. These episodes all went up on Patreon and were exclusive to Patreon until I decided to do this. But I will say that I'm going to be doing episodes just like this for episodes 8 and 9, the final 2 episodes, but those are going to stay behind the paywall on Patreon forever. So if you want to pledge $2 or more at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, you'll have access to those the minute that they post, and which I'm hoping to be like July 4th. And then, you'll get a whole bunch of other crap as well. So, including my book reviews and book reactions for Stephen King short fiction, and a bunch of immediate movie reviews and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm going to go ahead and play myself out. And I just want to say thank you guys once again for supporting us. And let me know what you thought about Stranger Things and my somewhat coherent, sometimes incoherent thoughts and ramblings about them. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening and supporting us, and I'll see you in the next recording.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.